Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sierah Joughin. Sierah Joughin is a young girl who gets along with everyone. She has a cheerful, humorous, and energetic personality that brings joy to those around her. Even when she makes mistakes, she knows how to make her mother smile. As she grows up and enters high school, Sierah has maintained her adventurous spirit. She is not afraid to try new experiences, such as playing volleyball, and she is comfortable and confident both on and off the court. On July 19, 2016, Joughin's family returned home from vacation and started unpacking. Sierah was excited about her upcoming fall semester at university, especially her plans to study abroad. Her mother wanted to talk to her about it. Sierah is very active and recently bought a bike, but she hasn't had the chance to ride it yet. Whenever she finds some free time, she's eager to go biking. That day, Sierah left the house dressed casually in shorts and a tank top, with her hair in a ponytail. She told her mother she was going to visit her boyfriend Josh, who lives 712 miles away, and her mother approved of her plan. At approximately 1:05 p.m., Josh called Sierah's house. He was concerned because he couldn't reach her. Her phone went straight to voicemail. When Josh asked Sierah's mother if she was home, she replied that Sierah wasn't home. Josh then informed Sierah's mother that Sierah had left his house shortly before 7 p.m. and that he hadn't seen or heard from her since. Sierah's mother immediately sensed that something was wrong because Sierah wasn't answering her phone as she usually did. She quickly contacted Sierah's parents and grandparents, who lived nearby, but they had no idea where Sierah was. Extremely worried about their daughter's safety, Sierah's and Josh's families began an urgent search. Sierah's mother immediately got in the car and was determined to search everywhere possible. She carefully checked every corner and both sides of the road, but still could not find any trace of Sierah. Meanwhile, Sierah's aunt, along with her husband and son, also joined the search. They were worried that Sierah might have had an accident. Despite their best efforts, they still could not find any sign of her. When Sierah's mother returned home, she urgently contacted Sierah's friends via social media, hoping that someone had seen or heard news about her. However, there was no response. After many hours, there was still no sign of Sierah. Very worried, Sierah's mother decided to call the police. Just an hour later, a neighbor called to report that County Road 6 was blocked. Sierah's family rushed out of their home to see what was happening. They found a chaotic scene, with police officers refusing to let them through and providing no information. This left Sierah's mother in a panic, wondering if the police had found her missing daughter. Desperate for information, local police decided to seek the assistance of the FBI. EY promised to provide any updates to Sierah's family as soon as possible. Sierah's family couldn't sleep and lay awake, thinking about what they should do the next day. Sierah's mother and aunt refused to wait for answers and took matters into their own hands. Her mother began calling hospitals, hoping to find any sign of Sierah. After several calls with no results, they felt increasingly hopeless. However, a glimmer of hope appeared when they received a tip from Detroit, Michigan, about a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to Sierah. That woman was taken to the hospital without any identification after trying to escape from a moving car. She was severely injured, with multiple broken bones. In order to identify her, a nurse asked Sierah's family to check her body. Sierah's mother confirmed that Sierah had a scar on her calf and a pierced navel. The woman in the hospital appeared to match Sierah's description. Sierah's family hoped that the girl in the hospital was Sierah. However, they quickly discovered that it was not her, which was devastating for them, as they had pinned so much hope on finding Sierah. The next morning, police came to Sierra's home to provide an update on the events of the previous night. They reported that one of their officers had discovered a destroyed cornfield nearby. When he arrived at the area, he noticed signs of a struggle. He also saw traces of a motorcycle and decided not to disturb any evidence. During the incident, he caught a glimpse of Sierra's purple bicycle. Police later found several items at the scene, including both men's and women's sunglasses, a pair of bloody socks, and a screwdriver. Based on these findings, the police believe Sierra was abducted at this location. During the investigation, detectives extensively interviewed Sierra's friends and family to gather information about her boyfriend, Josh. Through their inquiries, they discovered that Sierra and Josh had been best friends since they were 7 years old. Their friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship during their freshman year of high school, where they were known to be a lively and fun-loving couple. One of their shared passions was skiing, which they often enjoyed together. After graduating from high school, Sierra chose to attend the University of Toledo, while Josh enrolled at Bowling Green. Despite the distance, their commitment to their relationship remained strong, and they frequently discussed the prospect of marriage. However, Sierra wanted to prioritize her studies before settling down. Their relationship remained serious, and they had weathered the challenges of a long-distance relationship. Detectives determined that Sierra arrived at Josh's home at approximately 1 p.m. on July 19th. According to the information they gathered, at around 6:30 p.m. that day, Sierra decided to leave Josh's home and wanted to ride her bike home. Concerned for her safety, Josh offered to accompany her on his motorcycle. On the way home, Sierra insisted that Josh turn around and let her walk home by herself, wanting to demonstrate her independence. Josh reluctantly agreed, and they parted ways, with him returning on his motorcycle and Sierra continuing her ride home. During the investigation, detectives found motorcycle tracks in the corn near Sierra's bike. This raised the question of whether these tracks could belong to Josh's bike. Detectives could not ignore this potential connection and began gathering more evidence to determine if there was any link to Josh at the scene. They quickly organized a search team to look for any clues about Sierra's missing. On July 14th, a resident reported that, while driving down the road, they picked up a motorcycle helmet lying on the side of the road. When they heard about Sierra's situation, they decided to take a closer look at the helmet and found red stains on it, possibly blood. The helmet was found in the area near where Sierra's bike was located in the cornfield. To find the owner of the helmet, the police approached Josh regarding his motorcycle helmet. Josh provided the helmet, proving that he had been wearing it when he went out. Additionally, the police confirmed that Josh had returned home after interrogating his parents. This evidence eliminated Josh from the list of suspects involved in Sierra's missing. Investigators were determined to identify the owner of the blood-stained motorcycle helmet found on the side of the road. They recognized the importance of DNA evidence, so they decided to send it to the crime lab for analysis. News of Sierra's missing quickly spread through the community. Residents formed search parties to thoroughly explore the area for any clues that could help locate her. The community also organized a candlelight vigil for Sierra at the local high school. Hundreds attended, holding flickering candles, as they came together in a display of grief, hope to her safe return. 2 days into the investigation into Sierra's missing, police received information about a truck seen speeding through the area. There was speculation that Sierra might have been kidnapped and sexually trafficked in the truck. The informant provided the police with the license plate number. Based on this clue, they interviewed the truck's owner. It was discovered that the speeding truck was not related to Sierra's abduction. The man explained that another car had suddenly pulled up from behind, possibly a family member searching for Sierra, which startled him. Consequently, he instinctively accelerated. After 48 hours of investigation, there were no leads on Sierah's whereabouts. Her family found it increasingly difficult to remain hopeful as each day passed and the chances of finding her alive diminished. Although they tried to remain optimistic, the grim reality of the situation became increasingly hard to ignore. The police conducted a door-to-door search for Sierah. Eventually, the investigation led them to a farm not far from where her bicycle was found. The property was about an acre in size and included several structures, such as a small house, a trailer, and a large barn. The owner of the property, James Worley, was met by the police at the farm and was questioned about the day Sierah went missing, hoping to gather relevant information. James surprisingly revealed that he had gone out on a motorbike that day, but the bike had broken down, causing him to lose some items, such as a screwdriver and a helmet. This revelation shocked the detectives, as those items were the same ones found at the scene of Sierah's abduction. James's unwitting involvement in the crime scene became a red flag for the detectives. Sierah's missing and her connection to James were becoming increasingly suspicious. While questioning James Worley, the detectives noticed scratches on his face, indicating that he had been involved in a fight. This further intensified the police's suspicions regarding James and raised numerous questions, such as whether the scratches were the result of a confrontation with Sierah. Detectives returned to the police station after questioning James Worley about Sierah's missing. They wanted to check his file, hoping to find relevant information. As they dug into James's past, they discovered that he had a dark criminal record, which included an attempted kidnapping of a young girl 26 years earlier, on July 4, 1989. On July 4, 1989, 26-year-old Robin Garter planned to attend a neighborhood picnic. Her mother was preparing potato salad and other food for the event. Robin thought it would be a good idea to go for a bike ride before the picnic. However, she had not brought any water with her, and it was getting very hot and uncomfortable. At that point, Robin considered going home to quench her thirst. Just as she was about to leave, she heard the sound of a car approaching. Robin figured she would wait for the car to pass and then go home. But before she could react, the car struck her bicycle. After the collision, Robin was hauled into the ditch by the side of the road. Dazed and confused, she still heard the driver stop and run out to check on her. The driver was none other than James, approached Robin anxiously, trying to assess the situation. The situation quickly became very dangerous. James suddenly struck Robin from behind, hitting her head very hard. Then, he pressed a screwdriver to her neck, threatening her life with menacing words. He ordered Robin to get into his car immediately. With the screwdriver pressed to her neck, James forced Robin into the car. After pushing her inside, he attempted to handcuff her. However, Robin resisted strongly, not allowing him to secure the second handcuff. Despite her screams for help, there was no one in the deserted field to hear her cries. Robin's persistent struggle against him caused her to nearly faint several times, but she persevered. In the unusual silence, she suddenly heard a faint sound in the distance. And she looked closely. She noticed a motorbike approaching James's vehicle. Realizing that this might be her only chance to escape, Robin began waving her arms repeatedly to attract the motorcyclist's attention. Fortunately, the motorcyclist recognized her urgency and quickly stopped. In her desperate plea for help, Robin told the motorcyclist that James intended to kidnap her. Without hesitation, she climbed onto the back of the motorbike, escaping her captor and the vehicle. The man on the motorbike took Robin home, where she eventually fainted. Robin's mother called the police and an ambulance. The motorcyclist, wanting to assist the authorities, led the police back to the scene. They were surprised to find James Worley still there with his car. When questioned, James was cooperative and provided identification to confirm his identity. However, his version of the story differed significantly from what was initially believed. He completely denied any intention to kidnap Robin. According to James, Robin had been riding her bike erratically, swerving into the road, which left him unable to avoid a collision. He claimed that after the accident, Robin was in a state of panic, which was why he had handcuffed her, not with the intention of causing harm, but to tie her to the steering wheel of his truck while he sought help. He insisted that his actions were motivated solely by genuine concern for her well-being. James Worley was arrested in 1989 after attempting to kidnap Robin. He was convicted of kidnapping and subsequently incarcerated in the state prison in Mansfield, Ohio. James was sentenced to 6 to 10 years in prison but was released 3 years later for good behavior. When Robin learned that the man who had tried to kidnap her was released, she was terrified. The fear that James might strike again haunted her. Armed with information about James Worley's criminal past, the police decided to visit his residence. With a search warrant in hand, the officers went to the home of James, who was suspected of being involved in Sierra's missing. They found nothing unusual in the house. However, when they examined James's backyard, they discovered a small shed tucked away in the corner. Upon opening the shed, they found several bales of hay inside. The officers conducted a thorough search of the barn and the surrounding area, looking for evidence that could link James to Sierra's missing. All areas were searched meticulously, with the aim of uncovering any hidden items or clues. During the search, the detectives found a small green box hidden in a corner of James Worley's barn. They carefully approached and opened the box, revealing its contents. Inside, they found several carefully labeled and sealed bags containing underwear, socks, and tube tops in Ziploc plastic bags. As they examined the other items, they came across a pair of purple panties stained with a blood-like substance. The detectives were concerned about other disturbing discoveries that might await them in their search of James's compound. The detectives noticed a piece of plywood on the ground. Recognizing its potential importance, they carefully removed the board to reveal a small chest freezer buried in the barn. When they opened the freezer, they detected a strong chemical odor similar to bleach, which heightened their suspicions. As they continued to investigate, they found other disturbing elements partially hidden among the straw bales. Among the items discovered was a dirty mattress pad. The presence of zip ties, duct tape, handcuffs, and keys intensified their concerns, as these items are often associated with kidnappings and other nefarious activities. Detectives collected all the evidence for DNA testing. James attempted to defend himself by claiming that the items were part of a pornographic entertainment business he was planning. However, the evidence gathered was far too overwhelming to support his explanation. The combination of evidence collected from the crime scene, along with the incriminating items, led to James' arrest for Sierra's murder. Sierra's family was shocked to learn that her abductor lived far from her home. This revelation left them with many questions, the most pressing of which was undoubtedly, where was she? Detectives conducted a thorough investigation of James' property, leaving no stone unturned. They meticulously searched every inch of the property to ensure a comprehensive examination. To aid in the search dogs were brought in to detect any potential human remains. During the investigation, detectives discovered a pond. Recognizing its potential significance, they carefully drained the pond to search for evidence that might have been concealed beneath the water. Detectives examined the insulation at the front of the attic. As the investigation continued, they expanded their search to neighboring properties, realizing that evidence might be scattered outside James's property. They patiently pursued leads in all directions. At that time, a farmer walking in his field noticed a strange area of corn that appeared to be covered He decided to investigate further. As he approached the area, he saw a mound of dirt and immediately thought it could be a grave. The farmer's concerns were heightened by the recent events surrounding the search for Sierah. He wasted no time in calling the police, sharing his suspicions and the exact location. When the farmer called for help, the police arrived on the scene. They noticed a newly turned area of dirt, which led them to suspect it could be a grave. After carefully assessing the situation, the police began investigating the area, taking care not to disturb any potential evidence. The police conducted a thorough search of the scene, hoping to find clues about Sierah's whereabouts. However, despite their best efforts, their search was fruitless. Detectives expanded their search, using drones and helicopters to survey nearby farms in hopes of increasing air chances of finding Sierah. During their investigation, the detectives discovered an area of land covered with fresh corn. Their dogs detected the smell of decomposition, suggesting that this could be a crime scene. When investigators dug into the area, they discovered the remains of a person. Based on the evidence, it was believed that this was Sierah's body. Unfortunately, her hands and feet were bound, and there was a foreign object lodged in her mouth, making it difficult for her to breathe. The evidence suggested that she had died of asphyxiation. That night, Sierah's family received the devastating news they had feared. The police had found Sierah's lifeless body. The news was heartbreaking, and the family wept. It was a tragic moment, and they were overwhelmed with grief. A month after Sierah's abduction and murder, James Worley was indicted on 19 related charges, including kidnapping and aggravated murder. 2 years later, James went to trial on these charges. Despite overwhelming evidence against him, James pleaded not guilty to all counts. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning their verdict in James Worley's case. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, James was convicted on all counts related to Sierah's murder. The severity of the crime resulted in the imposition of the death penalty for James Worley. In conclusion, the harrowing case of Sierah Joughin has come to a tragic end, revealing the dark depths of human cruelty and the devastating impact it can have on a family and community. The relentless pursuit of justice led to the discovery of Sierah's remains and the conviction of James Worley, whose past offenses and heinous actions were instrumental in bringing him to justice. As Sierah's family continues to mourn their loss, they can find some measure of solace in knowing that James Worley has been held accountable. This case serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the enduring fight for our justice in the face of profound tragedy. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nicholas Wilcox. Nicholas Wilcox, a 39-year-old man from Putnam, Connecticut, lives in a duplex apartment, a popular property type in Florida that is designed for 2 families, with separate rooms, yards, and entrances. Isabella, a 38-year-old woman from Brazil, was the first person invited to rent one of the vacant apartments by Nicholas Wilcox. She used to work as a flight attendant for a national airline in Brazil. After getting divorced in 2010, she moved to America with her children and later married an American, which helped her obtain a green card. Isabella's marriage ended in 2016, and she started dating Eric Robinson, a 46-year-old man from Massachusetts who had never been married and had no children. Despite their romantic feelings for each other, their relationship was occasionally turbulent due to their passionate nature and Eric's bachelor lifestyle. According to Isabella, Eric's behavior was inconsistent and unpredictable, switching between cheerfulness and aggression without warning. This led to repeated breakups and makeups. By June 2017, they had separated once again, shortly before Eric and Isabella moved in with Nicholas. Initially, the living arrangement worked well, with Nicholas and Isabella and Eric respecting each other's space while also spending quality time together. However, over time, problems arose. It was discovered that Eric was using and storing illicit substances, which explained his erratic mood swings. This behavior led to Eric's arrest on August 23, 2017. Nicholas was fortunate to have a steady stream of work, unlike Isabella, who struggled to find a suitable job. To make ends meet, she started helping her neighbor in the construction business. It's worth noting that Nicholas's family had a long history of working in similar trades. His grandfather was a fisherman and boat builder, while his father dedicated his life to construction. After graduating in 1996, Nicholas joined the family business, becoming a roofer. He worked alongside his older brother, Donald, as contractors, building their own client base. At 23, Nicholas started a family with his high school classmate, Kathy. They had a daughter a year later, and twins 3 years after that. Throughout this time, Nicholas worked hard to provide for his family. Despite his busy schedule, friends and acquaintances remembered him as a devoted husband and father. However, his dedication to his professional pursuits may have contributed to the eventual breakdown of his family. They divorced shortly after the birth of their younger children. Despite this, Nicholas continued to support and communicate with his family. In 2017, Nicholas made a fresh start by moving to Florida to pursue better job opportunities. The new location proved to be a smart choice, as he saw a significant increase in clients. Unlike his previous seasonal work, Nicholas was now able to earn a steady income almost year-round. As a professional, Nicholas's skills were in high demand in Florida, where powerful hurricanes frequently damaged homes along the coast during storm season. His expertise was needed to reinforce and repair homes, which helped him build a successful business. Despite leaving his family back in Connecticut, Nicholas remained committed to caring for his children from a distance, sending them financial support and visiting whenever possible, as per his agreement with his ex-wife. After living in a multi-apartment complex in Fort Lauderdale, Nicholas moved to the suburbs to lower his housing costs. This is when he met Isabella. As the hurricane season began, Nicholas's workload increased significantly due to daily orders. At the same time, Hurricane Irma was approaching the area where Nicholas lived and worked. An emergency was declared, and about 7 million people were evacuated from coastal areas. To prepare for the storm, Nicholas spent his time reinforcing homes, boarding up windows and doors, and later clearing the debris left behind. Nicholas's main job was to help people, and he got paid for it. But he wasn't in it just for the money. His older brother said that Nicholas always lent a hand to those in need. In September 2017, Florida was bracing for a devastating hurricane. Nicholas spent the day boarding up windows with plywood to prepare. As a result, there was a shortage of plywood in stores, leading to long lines of people waiting to buy some. At that time, Nicholas met a woman named Pamela, who was struggling to find materials to protect her home. Nicholas promised to help her, and that evening, he delivered the 7 sheets of plywood she needed. He then spent the whole day boarding up her doors and windows, refusing payment for his efforts. Nicholas was deeply sympathetic to Pamela's plight as a single mother in need of assistance. In response, he offered her help, and she was extremely grateful. This sparked a romantic connection between them. The devastating hurricane that followed brought Nicholas a substantial amount of work, which allowed him to employ his neighbor, Isabella, as his assistant. Isabella's responsibilities included cleaning up job sites and handing Nicholas tools as needed. As they spent more time together, their friendly interactions blossomed into romance. On September 3rd, they made a commitment to each other, sealing their promise with a handwritten vow in blood, symbolizing their desire for a long, happy life together, filled with many children. The lovers, Nicholas and Isabella, faced minor issues and disagreements soon after their union. These disputes escalated, culminating in a serious conflict on September 22, which led Isabella to leave home and spend the night in a hotel. However, they reconciled the next morning. According to Isabella, Nicholas was neglecting her and showing a lack of respect. Nicholas, on the other hand, believed she was exaggerating. Their disagreements ultimately led to severe consequences. On October 5, 2017, a mysterious call was made to the local police. The caller claimed to be Isabella's former husband and asked the police to contact Isabella, stating she had information about a recent crime. However, he didn't provide further details. The police responded promptly and called Isabella, who sounded hysterical. When questioned about the situation, she claimed everything was fine, except for a fight with her boyfriend, Nicholas. Isabella told the police that her partner had left her and driven away, but when they mentioned a call from her former husband, she broke down and confessed that her partner was actually dead. She claimed to know where the body was and offered to show them. When the police arrived at the address Isabella provided, they found a house that was being prepared for a hurricane, with all windows and doors boarded up. Inside, they noticed a strong smell of cleaning products and paint, indicating that one of the bedrooms had been thoroughly cleaned. However, upon closer inspection, the detectives suspected that someone was trying to cover something up. The walls and floor had been hastily and sloppily painted, and they found containers of hydrogen peroxide, which is often used to clean bloodstains. They discovered small bloodstains on the bedding and bedside table, and it was clear that the old mattress had been replaced. The police found blood stains throughout the room, suggesting a violent crime had taken place. Isabella had attempted to clean up the scene but hadn't finished before the police arrived. Isabella was discovered inside the duplex, visibly distressed, and explained that she had been under the influence of a sedative during the phone call with her ex-husband, which accounted for her unusual behavior. Despite her initial confusion, Isabella confirmed that she knew what had happened in the room and where the body was located. Due to her unstable state, the police decided to take her to the station for further questioning. Meanwhile, the police had spoken with her ex-husband again, who provided a partial account of the events. According to Isabella's ex-husband, she had called him and told him about the crime. However, during her interrogation, Isabella claimed that her former boyfriend, Eric Robinson, was involved in the crime. She stated that on October 5, around 2 a.m., Eric had arrived at the duplex, found her and Nicholas asleep, and became enraged by a vow hanging above the bed's headboard in the bedroom. Eric woke Isabella by holding a knife to her throat, threatening to harm her if she screamed. As he did, she saw Nicholas, who was lying next to her, struggling to breathe. But Eric didn't allow her to look any further and forced her out of the bedroom. Then, he brutally beat Nicholas, who was defenseless, using a brass knuckle and the bat. After the beating, Eric wrapped Nicholas' body in a tarp and tied it up with straps. He threatened Isabella, forcing her to help him get rid of the body. Later, the detectives were confused as to why Isabella, instead of calling the police, had called her ex-husband. In an explanation, Isabella said she was terrified and sought comfort and guidance. According to her, Eric also made her clean up the crime scene and erase all evidence. Before leaving, he returned her phone, which he had taken earlier. Her confession raised doubts and required further investigation. Additionally, the detectives noticed visible bruises and scratches on Isabella's body, which she claimed were a result of Eric beating her after Nicholas' death. The investigation started with a search for the victim and the suspect, who revealed the location of Nicholas. While medical examiners worked on the body, forensic specialists arrived at the scene. Meanwhile, law enforcement searched for Eric, who had been released from prison on October 3 and was living at a different address. During this time, Eric had met a woman, Merida, and was staying with her. Merida told the police that on the night of October 5, her boyfriend received a phone call and left immediately. He returned around 5 a.m., packed his things, and left again without explanation. When asked if she noticed any bloodstains on her boyfriend's clothes, Merida said she hadn't seen anything suspicious. Eric was found around 8 p.m., 4 miles away from the house. He refused to cooperate with the investigation and was taken into custody for further inquiry. During the interrogation, Eric provided a different account of the events than Isabella's. According to Eric, Isabella had contacted him on the night of October 5th, despite having a restraining order against him. Isabella attacked Nicholas while under the influence of banned substances and ultimately ended his life. After regaining her composure, she realized she needed help and asked Eric to assist her. In exchange, she promised to rekindle their relationship and start anew. Eric, still having strong feelings for her, agreed to her terms. The investigation revealed that Isabella was not as innocent as she seemed. She had a history of police encounters, and on September 22nd, a heated argument with Nicholas got out of hand. Under the influence of Xanax and other substances, Isabella became violent, destroying some of Nicholas' belongings and damaging his work vehicle. Fearing for his life, Nicholas contacted the police. Although they reconciled the next morning and Nicholas dropped the complaint, investigators discovered Isabella's history of erratic behavior, including a conversation with her ex-husband that shed more light on her past. He described Isabella as having a volatile personality and a hot temper. During their argument, he had threatened to report her to immigration services if she continued to behave in such a manner. For Isabella, the opportunity to live in the U.S. was crucial, so the threat of deportation was devastating. It's possible that during another argument, Isabella's explosive personality led her to react violently, motivated by her desire to stay in America. To gather more information, detectives started interviewing people close to them. A neighbor who lived in the adjacent duplex proved to be a crucial witness. She reported seeing Eric arrive at the scene in his car on the night of the crime. He then retrieved some tools and trash bags before leaving the area. The investigation continued, with substantial evidence collected. On October 11th, Isabella was called in for another interrogation, which she attended voluntarily since she had not been arrested at that point. Detectives reviewed video surveillance footage and determined that on the night of the incident, Isabella personally moved Nicholas's body and disposed of it in a trash container. During this time, she remained calm and composed, making decisions independently. She also met with Eric Robinson that night. Isabella appeared relaxed and friendly. She even purchased items needed for emergency repairs herself. However, as the investigation progressed, she began to change her story, adding new details about the events. Isabella claimed that Eric had threatened to kill her and deport her and her children, forcing her to act as she did. Although her statement seemed believable, investigators were cautious in their conclusions. Both Eric and Isabella had questionable pasts, which raised suspicions. Eric, in particular, had a history of run-ins with the law, dating back to 2001, primarily for possession and distribution of narcotics. In August 2016, Isabella had legitimate reasons to fear Eric in question, as he had committed an aggravated assault against a woman. In June 2017, he was arrested for strangulation and later that year for possessing prohibited substances. Eric's neighbors were terrified of him due to his aggressive and unpredictable behavior, and they actively avoided him. On October 14th, experts discovered traces of Isabella's DNA on the Nicholas body, contradicting her claim of not having touched Nicholas. This evidence suggested that she was involved in the violent crime against her lover, at the very least in disposing of the body and eliminating evidence. Despite the evidence, neither Isabella or Eric admitted to any wrongdoing. While Eric was held in custody, Isabella was briefly detained before being released to await trial. Although everyone expected the court proceedings to begin soon, various complications and delays pushed the trial back by 5 years. The trial of Eric Robinson was significantly delayed due to the bureaucratic issues. During this time, the prosecution developed its strategy and tactics, while the defense thoroughly reviewed the investigation findings. Additionally, new evidence was discovered, including the recovery of Eric's deleted social media account, which he had used to discuss the crime with his former friend. As the trial approached, Isabella made a plea deal with the prosecution. She agreed to testify against Eric Robinson. On April 10, 2023, the trial finally took place. The prosecution argued that Eric was solely responsible for the crime against Nicholas, while Isabella's role was presented as a witness who tampered with evidence and helped eliminate traces, a crime in itself. The trial was marked by several cancellations due to legal complexities, but resumed after a week. Throughout the trial, Eric was charged with premeditated murder. Despite inconsistencies in Isabella's testimonies, her attorney maintained her innocence. The prosecution emphasized witness statements describing Eric's unusual behavior on the night of the crime. Specifically, Eric used his new girlfriend's car, which didn't have GPS tracking, to avoid detection. He also left his mobile phone at home to prevent tracking. Separately, other case details came to light. After the crime, Eric and Isabella were together in a room nearby, where they were intimate. Isabella later explained her actions, stating she was under the influence of strong sedatives at the time and also feared for her life after what had happened. The motive behind the brutal and senseless murder of Nicholas was revealed to be jealousy. Although Isabella had ended their relationship, Eric still considered her his girlfriend. When he was released from prison, he returned home to find that significant changes had taken place in his absence, which only fueled his rage and hatred. During this time, Eric plotted his revenge against his perceived rival. He committed a cold-blooded attack while Nicholas was asleep and vulnerable, sealing his fate with the first strike. Eric then attempted to cover his tracks by scattering evidence in various locations. The murder weapon was later found in a landfill, and Nicholas's body was discovered wrapped in tarpaulin and hidden in a trash container. Isabella, following Eric's instructions, painted over the blood-splattered walls and cleaned the area to conceal the evidence. Ultimately, 51-year-old Eric was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for second-degree murder. Isabella was found guilty of aiding Eric, but the court considered threats and coercion as mitigating circumstances. As a result, she received a suspended sentence and is on probation until 2026. Isabella was willing to do whatever it took to gain U.S. citizenship. Just 10 days after Eric was incarcerated, the parties signed another agreement in which Eric promised to marry Isabella. However, he failed to follow through on this promise. It seems that Isabella is willing to marry anyone as long as it helps her maintain her status. All the men she has been involved with have been used for her own selfish purposes, and she has manipulated them into considering marriage. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat, the case of Laura Wallen. Laura Wallen was born on February 10, 1986, to parents Mark and Gwen Wallen. She grew up in Olney, Maryland, alongside her older sister Jennifer, with whom she had a very close relationship. Laura's passion was in helping others, which led her to pursue a career as a social science teacher. The investigation into her disappearance began on September 5, 2017. It was led by Montgomery County Police Chief Tom Manger. He worked alongside Laura's family and friends, as well as her students. A group of more than 20 people, led by Saquon Maxwell, a former student of Laura's, came together to spread the word about Laura's disappearance by distributing flyers throughout the neighborhood and school district. Police officers searched Laura's neighborhood, asking residents questions and keeping a close eye on the area between Howard and Montgomery County. Laura's father, Mark, made a public plea for anyone with information to come forward and help find his daughter. He wanted Laura to know they were doing everything they could to find her and they weren't going to give up. Losing a child is one of the most difficult experiences a parent can face, and Mark wanted his daughter to know that they were working hard to bring her home safely. On the evening of September 7, 2017, an employee at the Jersey Gated complex in Columbia, Maryland, found a new clue. While rummaging through a dumpster, he found Laura's license inside a cell phone. When police arrived, they also found Laura's vehicle parked at the complex. What puzzled them was that the complex was located just across the highway from Wild Lake High School, where Laura worked. This raised questions about why Laura would have parked her car there. Police took the evidence they collected to the lab for further testing. They also looked deeper into Laura's past and spoke to people close to her. To cover more ground, the investigation team divided into two groups. One group focused on tracking Laura's online activities, while the other group interviewed her family members and her boyfriend. To gather evidence, the police searched Laura's computer and cell phone. They also thoroughly searched her car for any clues that might point to her disappearance. In addition, they carefully reviewed her financial transactions and cell phone records. As part of their inquiry, the police also spoke with Laura's parents and sister about her disappearance. Laura's father, Mark, told them that the family had planned a weekend trip together, but Laura decided to stay behind to spend time with her boyfriend, Tyler. This was confirmed by her sister, Jennifer, who told police that Laura was expecting Tyler to propose to her during their time together. Police also obtained a text message conversation between Jennifer and Laura from the same weekend. Jennifer received messages from Laura stating that she and Tyler had plans for a countryside adventure on Saturday, September 2, 2017. Mark mentioned that Tyler had expressed his intention to marry Laura after learning of her pregnancy. However, on Monday morning, September 4, 2017, Laura sent Jennifer a concerning text message claiming the baby was not Tyler's, but rather her ex-boyfriend Antoine's. Jennifer found this suspicious, as Laura hadn't seen Antoine in over 2 years. She also noted that Laura had misspelled Antoine's name. When Jennifer tried to contact Laura, she received no response. Upon returning home on Monday evening, the family discovered that Laura was missing, leaving behind burning candles and her pet dog locked inside. The family suggested questioning Tyler, as he was the last person to see Laura. Tyler spoke with police and shared details of his weekend with Laura. He explained that he took her to Damascus, Maryland, to view a property he was interested in buying as a home for their future family. Laura seems excited about the idea of starting a family in the countryside. However, when they returned to Olney the following day, Sunday, September 3, 2017, the atmosphere had changed. According to Tyler, Laura was not as happy as she had been the day before. He revealed that they had an argument in Damascus, but he declined to elaborate on the disagreement. Tyler told police that when they returned to Laura's house, she asked him to return his set of keys. He agreed, not wanting to upset her further due to her pregnancy. They had planned to meet at the Columbia Mall on the morning of Monday, September 4, 2017, for breakfast and to discuss their issues, but Laura did not show up. When Tyler visited her house, there was no sign of her. Tyler initially told the police that he was unable to enter Laura's home because he didn't have a key. However, this statement was false. The neighbors reported seeing Tyler walking Laura's dog on Monday, September 4, at 2:30 p.m., which directly contradicted Tyler's claim. This raised a question for the police. If Tyler didn't have a key, how was he able to enter the home to take the dog for a walk? As police dug deeper, their suspicions about Tyler grew. They asked for and received permission to review his phone records. They also secretly placed a tracking device on his vehicle to monitor his movements. During this time, the police continued to search for Laura, fearing the worst but they hoping for the best and that she would return safely. The investigation uncovered some crucial information. A debit card transaction on September 2, 2017, revealed that Laura had made a purchase at a Safeway store. Surveillance footage confirmed that Tyler and Laura were together that evening. Analysis of their phone records showed that both their phones were in the same locations from that Saturday evening, but on Sunday, Laura's phone suddenly stopped moving. This finding, combined with the tracking device revealing Tyler's frequent visits to a field in Damascus, continues to imply Tyler is involved in Laura's disappearance. Tyler's phone records showed that he had texted a friend on Sunday evening, asking for a ride to help clean up a mess, but the friend declined. Further investigation revealed that both Tyler's and Laura's fingerprints were found on her vehicle, cell phone, and license, which were discovered in a dumpster in Colombia. This new evidence led police to bring Tyler in for additional questioning. Police asked Tyler about his involvement with Laura's cell phone and the presence of his fingerprints on her belongings. They also inquired about the cryptic message he had sent to his friend. In response, Tyler changed his story. He claimed that Laura was in trouble because she was pregnant by someone else, not him. He alleged that Laura had an affair with a student, which resulted in her pregnancy. Tyler's statement to the police was startling. He explained that he had taken Laura's car, license, and phone, and discarded them at the complex, an attempt to give her a head start to escape her problems before her family found out. His intention, he claimed, was to buy her some time to sort out her issues. He acknowledged trying to mislead everyone, including the police, in order to protect her because he cared about her. However, when police asked Tyler about Laura's current location, he denied knowing where she is now. But the police were not convinced by his story. Unbeknownst to Tyler, investigators had already discovered other messages on his phone, which painted a different picture of his relationship with Laura. A closer look at his phone revealed, they discover that Tyler has been texting with other women. It turns out Laura isn't his only girlfriend. As the police dug deeper, they discovered that Tyler and Laura had a troubled 10-year relationship. This new information was sparked from Laura's father, Mark, who had always felt uneasy about Tyler. According to Mark, Tyler had never made an effort to be with Laura on important occasions, such as holidays and birthdays, which made him question Tyler's commitment to his daughter. What's more, Mark knew that Tyler was also dating another woman, Christina Wagner, who was a teacher like Laura. Further investigation led the police to friends of both Tyler and Christina. They revealed that Tyler had been leading a double life. It turned out that Tyler had met Christina in 2012 and had been living with her while still in a relationship with Laura. Friends of they told police that Christina and Tyler had gotten engaged and were planning to get married in 2018. When asked about Laura, Tyler's friends claimed that she had become aggressive and that Tyler was trying to distance himself from her. Police found text messages on Laura's phone that showed she had tried to contact Christina on August 28, 2017. In the messages, Laura expressed her desire to meet Christina to talk about Tyler. Friends claimed Christina was angry at Laura's bold actions and Christina confronted Tyler about it. Christina decided to file a police complaint. However, when police told Christina, Laura, and Tyler would have to go to court to get a restraining order, Tyler changed his mind and withdrew. Investigation revealed that Christina and Tyler had planned to spend the Labor Day weekend shopping for their wedding, but Tyler couldn't make it due to a knee injury. When police told Laura's family about Christina, they shared with officers what Laura had confided in them, that Tyler was being stalked by Christina. This new information made it more likely that Tyler could be a suspect in Laura's disappearance. Police brought Tyler in for questioning again, this time confronting him about Christina. Initially, he denied any involvement with her, but police were able to challenge his claim with evidence of his secret life. Eventually, Tyler admitted to cheating on both women, which had led to his fight with Laura. When investigators spoke with Tyler, he expressed his desire to mend his relationship with Laura. However, when asked about Laura's disappearance, he maintained that he was not involved. Unbeknownst to Tyler, the police discovered a connection between him and a vacant field in Damascus through his phone records. They found a link to a meat processing plant called KS Cuts, which was adjacent to the property that Tyler had visited with Laura. The plant's owner also owned the field they had visited. Interviews with the owner revealed that Tyler had previously worked for him and often helped him hunt on the property. Further questioning led to a disturbing discovery. Over the Labor Day weekend, Tyler had requested access to the safe on the owner's property, which contained 420 caliber rifles with ammunition. This new information led police to suspect that Laura may have been killed, but they could not confront Tyler yet. They still needed to find Laura and gather evidence to prove their suspicions correct. Laura's family, along with the police, devised a plan to try to get Tyler to reveal Laura's location. On September 11, 2017, Tyler joined Laura's parents, Mark and Gwen, at a press conference to appeal for Laura's safe return. However, this plan was set up as a trap. The police and Laura's family were hoping Tyler would make a mistake and reveal information about Laura's whereabouts. Meanwhile, police officers and cadaver dogs searched the fields near the meat processing plant in Damascus. During the press conference, Tyler made an emotional appeal for Laura's safe return. In his speech, he hinted that Laura shouldn't be ashamed of anything she'd done wrong. Tyler's speech included the following words: "Laura, if you're listening, it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what trouble you're in. We're going to fix it together, you, me, and your family. There are so many people who miss you, who are looking for you, and who are praying for your safety. We don't sleep or eat, we just pray that you're safe. I ask you to let us know that you're safe." Tyler claimed to be worried about Laura's disappearance, but what he didn't know was that he was the main suspect in the case. At the time, he seemed genuinely concerned, saying he was doing everything he could to find Laura and praying for her safe return. However, the situation took a devastating turn on September 13, 2017, just 2 days after the press conference. A secluded area of a field was identified as the location of Laura Wallen's body after K-9 dogs detected something suspicious. Upon further investigation, detectives discovered a freshly dug grave and recovered Laura's body at 5:30 p.m. The police were able to identify the body by matching the clothes Laura was wearing to a picture Jennifer had shown them from her last conversation with Laura. The discovery marked a tragic end to the desperate search for Laura. Laura Wallen, a highly respected teacher at Wild Lake High School and recent Teacher of the Year, tragically passed. The incident occurred around noon. Unfortunately, her unborn child also did not survive. The same day, Tyler Tessier, Laura's boyfriend, was arrested and charged with her murder. Tyler held at the county jail while investigators awaited the initial autopsy report. The report confirmed that Laura had been shot in the back of the head before being buried in the field. When Tyler was confronted with evidence, he created a false story. He claimed that on Sunday evening, he and Laura were at her house when a group of African American men burst in, took them hostage at gunpoint, and drove them to Damascus. According to Tyler, the men spared his life but shot Laura in the head, forcing him to bury her in a field. They threatened to harm him if he revealed their identities or led the police to Laura's body. However, police did not believe this story because they knew the relationship between Tyler and the property owner. Tyler then changed his story, claiming that he and Laura had an argument, which ended with him pushing her, causing her to fall, hit her head. He assumed she had died and buried her in the field to hide her body. Later, Tyler claimed that he had reconsidered and thought Laura might still be alive. To end her suffering, he dug up the grave, shot her in the head, and covered his tracks. He described this as a mercy killing. Tyler was held without bail at the Montgomery County Detention Center. Laura and her unborn son, baby Reed, were laid to rest in a public cemetery on September 30, 2017. Over 1,000 people, including Laura's family, Friends and students attended the funeral to pay their respects to the beloved teacher. The prosecution, led by Montgomery County State Attorney John McCarthy, was building its case against Tyler. As they investigated, they developed a theory about Tyler's double life. They believed that Tyler was willing to continue living a secret life until Laura discovered his relationship with Christina. Fearing his deception would be exposed, Tyler began planning to kill Laura so he could continue his life with Christina. Tyler saw Labor Day weekend as the perfect opportunity to carry out his plan. With Christina out of town and Laura's family away, no one would be able to ask him about Laura's whereabouts until the weekend was over, giving him time to come up with an alibi. He chose a location he was familiar with, where he knew he could access the necessary equipment through a friend. The area was also isolated, making it unlikely that anyone would think to look for Laura there. Tyler fabricated a story about Laura's infidelity to throw her family and investigators off his trail. He deliberately left her car and belongings near her workplace, tried to create false evidence that she had run away because of a scandalous affair. However, Tyler made critical mistakes, constantly changing his alibi, which raised suspicions among the police from the start. Moreover, Tyler underestimated Laura's family, who had noticed that his relationship with Laura was unusual from the beginning. They felt that he never had the responsibility to her as a real-life partner. The prosecution had built a strong case against Tyler, presenting a convincing argument. However, Maryland law only allowed Tyler to be charged with Laura's murder. The death of her unborn child was not considered a separate crime under Maryland law, and this decision would be disputed during Tyler's trial in September 2018. On September 6, 2018, the pursuit of justice for Laura Wallen and her unborn son, baby Reed, came to an abrupt end. Tyler Tessier, the individual responsible for their deaths, was found hanging in his jail cell around 5 a.m. He had been allowed to shower and have breakfast before taking his own life. The news was a devastating blow to Laura's family, who had been seeking justice for their loved ones. They remembered Laura as a bright and loving person. According to reports, Tyler had written 5 letters indicating that he had planned to take his own life for some time. Laura's family did not get to see Tyler brought to justice. Laura's mother, when described Tyler as a diabolical human, and expressed relief that her family no longer had to worry about him being a part of their society. The case of Laura's murder is a tragedy that will leave many people questioning the nature of evil. It's heartbreaking that Laura and her unborn child were killed by the man she loved and trusted, who had promised her a happy future together. This case serves as a reminder that sometimes, the people we trust the most can be the ones who harm us the most. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Karen Oviedo. Rolando Angel Aquino was born in 1987 in Bolivia. As the eldest of 7 siblings, he learned the importance of family bonds and hard work from an early age. He dreamed of having a happy family filled with the joy and laughter of children. In his youth, he met Carolina Chavez and she bore him a son. Even though they divorced, they still maintain a good relationship. Then Soledad Gardio entered his life and they had another son named Elias. Although the relationship with Soledad did not last long, Rolando remained a devoted and caring father to his children. He still kept in touch and maintained warm relationships with Carolina and Soledad. From an early age, Rolando was very active and passionate about sports, including football, and he played for a local team. Friends and family described him as kind and very hardworking. He got along well with his neighbors and was known for being exceptionally sociable. During a local soccer match, Rolando was attracted to Karen. Rolando and Karen soon developed a romance. A chance meeting led to true happiness. In 2016, Rolando and Karen lived together and opened a business at home. Karen was born on March 30, 1990, and grew up in Manado. Famous for being extroverted and open-minded, Karen always wanted to have a happy family. Before meeting Rolando, she married Rul, and then she and Rul had 2 beautiful daughters. However, over time, their marriage began to deteriorate. Financial difficulties were the main cause of their arguments, and they soon divorced. Rolando and Karen's lives passed peacefully, but a tragedy occurred. In the summer of 2019, Rolando's son, 9-year-old Elias, came to Rolando's house to visit him in the afternoon. That evening was filled with laughter from Elias, Rolando, and even Karen. However, the next morning, July 12, 2019, Rolando noticed that Elias was not feeling well. Rolando quickly contacted the family of his ex-wife, Soledad, and quickly took his son to the children's hospital. When Elias was transported to the hospital, pediatricians realized that Elias's condition was critical, requiring immediate transfer to the intensive care unit. Despite the efforts of medical staff, Elias died shortly after arriving at the hospital. What was puzzling was that Elias arrived at his father's house in completely normal health. Medical reports revealed that Elias died of third-degree poisoning, leading to multiple organ failure and cerebral thrombosis. This left Rolando and his ex-wife, Soledad, completely devastated. Doctors recommended additional forensic examinations. However, Soledad and Elias's grandmother refused the procedure. Karen then offered to cremate the boy's body, but Soledad instead chose to bury him in a private cemetery. Elias's death left Rolando completely anguished. He was greatly saddened by the sudden passing of his youngest son. Karen, caring and loving, was always by Rolando's side. She arranged everything, supported her boyfriend, and helped him overcome his pain and grief. Over time, with Karen's warmth and care, Rolando's pain began to ease. 16 months later, Rolando proposed to Karen. They got married, and Rolando believed that she would always be with him. However, their happiness was short-lived. Karen's life took a different turn on February 6, 2022, when she returned home from a gym session to find her husband Rolando extremely unwell. The next day, a medical ambulance was seen outside their home. 35-year-old Rolando had collapsed in the living room after vomiting violently. Emergency medical services quickly arrived, and Rolando was taken to Santa Maria Clinic. The medical team's efforts to save Rolando were ultimately unsuccessful. Rolando died on February 9 from severe poisoning. When medical staff began questioning Karen, they learned that Rolando had been taking medication for skin discoloration. However, this information only increased their suspicions. Closer examination of Rolando's body revealed an overdose of calcium oxalate crystals, which were often a sign of ethylene glycol poisoning, commonly used in automotive antifreeze. This mysterious and unexpected death led to an investigation into Rolando's death, and the authorities were determined to get to the bottom of it. The prosecutor's office questioned Rolando and Karen's neighbors, who revealed that Karen had repeatedly given her husband an unknown drug. Although Karen initially claimed it was a cure for Rolando's skin blemishes, neighbors remained suspicious, which led investigators to look into Karen. During the investigation, Karen was thoroughly questioned about the events surrounding her husband's death. Many conflicts arose during her interrogation. When asked about the substance she gave her husband before he died, Karen confirmed that it was a medicine to treat dark spots on her skin that she used through an intravenous infusion. However, she could not provide the potion because the housekeeper had thrown it away. Further investigation led to an interview with the housekeeper, Claudia Cortez, who contradicted Karen's statement about the disposal of the jar. Claudia also said she overheard a conversation between the couple in which Rolando expressed dissatisfaction with the medication he was taking. As a result, Karen was detained by the police and her cell phone was confiscated for further investigation. Rolando's sudden death shocked his family, friends, and teammates. Rolando's ex-wife, Karen's ex-husband, was especially stunned by rumors that Rolando's death might have been an act of intentional poisoning. Further investigation revealed disturbing evidence. A search of Karen's phone revealed she had researched the most dangerous toxins online and had found a way to delete her search history. Additionally, records showed she had ordered ethylene glycol, a toxic substance used in the manufacture of antifreeze, from an online store on 2 separate occasions. This substance is odorless, has a sweet taste, and is extremely dangerous to humans. Based on preliminary forensic results and collected evidence, the prosecutor's office charged Karen with intentionally poisoning Rolando. It is believed that she mixed the toxic substance with the orange juice that Rolando drank, causing his health to seriously decline and ultimately leading to his death. By mid-February, evidence against Karen had been collected, and Karen had been charged with capital murder. At the same time, investigators had begun looking into suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of 9-year-old Elias. A thorough investigation into Elias' medical history had been initiated by the prosecutor's office. According to the boy's mother, Elias had been in good health until he suddenly fell into a coma at his father's house and never recovered. Elias's death certificate had stated that his body had suffered from cerebral thrombosis. However, investigators had found this explanation suspicious, especially since Elias had been young and he had been in good health. As part of the investigation, the prosecutor's office had requested information about any purchases of ethylene glycol. Karen had been found to have purchased the poison on July 2, 2019, just before Elias had arrived at Aquino's residence. Relatives of Elias had also provided valuable information, revealing that Karen had urged the boy's body to be cremated, but his biological mother had instead chosen a traditional burial. These findings had been enough for prosecutor Claudia Rios to file more serious murder charges against Karen, accusing her of poisoning Elias. A judge had then ordered Karen detained pending trial on March 14. After she had tried to appeal the decision, the judge had overruled her, concluding that Karen would have to remain in detention until the trial began. Karen's highly publicized trial had begun on November 28, 2022, at Mendoza Criminal Court, attracting widespread public and media attention. 2 separate indictments had been pending against Karen, one for the murder of Elias, headed by prosecutor Fernando Gudo, and another for the murder of Rolando, headed by Claudia Rios. During the trial, Javier Aquino, Rolando's 15-year-old son, had appeared as the plaintiff, along with his lawyer. Prosecutor Fernando had presented the case, accusing Karen of poisoning Elias and Rolando by mixing ethylene glycol with orange juice, leading to severe poisoning and death. Karen's defense team had disputed the charges, claiming Rolando had a history of violence and abuse of their client. They had asserted that there had been no reliable evidence to support the allegations and that Karen had had no motive for murder. The defense had questioned why Karen would have killed Elias, who had posed no threat to her. They had also pointed out that Karen had been the sole owner of the house, car, and business, and that she had not made any suspicious purchases using her phone. Furthermore, the defense had argued that if Karen had used ethylene glycol to poison Elias, as the prosecutor had claimed, then her search for information about the poison on the internet would have made no sense. The defense had emphasized that although the deaths of Rolando and Elias had been heinous crimes, it had been necessary to clearly prove Karen's guilt before prosecuting her. Karen's defense team had tried to claim the allegations against her had been false. Karen had said that Rolando had bought the antifreeze by hacking into her account, instead of buying it herself. Additionally, Karen had claimed to have had an alibi for the day her husband had been poisoned on February 6, saying she had not been home when he had first shown symptoms. As the trial had continued, the prosecution had asked Karen a number of questions. An important point addressed by prosecutor Fernando had been whether Karen had offered to cremate her deceased son, Rolando. Karen had firmly replied that she had had no say in the matter and had never suggested cremation. The prosecution presented relatives of Rolando as witnesses to provide more insight into the events surrounding the death. Elias's mother, Soledad, testified that after her son's death, Rolando told her that Karen had suggested cremating Elias's body so both families could keep his ashes. However, Soledad refused this idea. She also shared her memories of meeting Rolando at the cemetery, where he mentioned Karen's jealousy. According to Soledad, Karen's jealousy was so intense that she and Rolando slept in separate beds. Another witness, Carolina, the mother of Rolando's first child, confirmed that Rolando and Karen slept separately, as her ex-husband had told her. Although Carolina had not interacted with Karen before the incident, Karen called her on the morning of February 8 to inform her that Rolando was in the hospital due to illness. Karen claimed that Rolando had probably taken some medication and was feeling unwell. She also asked Carolina to help her unlock Rolando's cell phone, suspecting that he was having an affair. Carolina was shocked to hear about Rolando's condition, as they had met just a few days prior and he seemed fine. After speaking with Karen, Carolina learned that Rolando had taken medication for skin blemishes, which caused an allergic reaction. The trial continued with doctors and experts presenting crucial forensic evidence and the results of a psychological examination to the jury. This new information shed light on previously overlooked details. Dr. Ivana Marinelli, a pediatrician who treated Elias in July 2019, explained how the boy was rushed to the hospital with severe breathing difficulties and required immediate intubation. A CT scan revealed a deep cerebral thrombosis, and Elias received intensive care. Dr. Ivana confirmed that Elias's symptoms were consistent with ethylene glycol poisoning, including impaired consciousness, restlessness, and a coma accompanied by a blood clotting disorder. The jury also reviewed the results of Karen's psychological examination, which was conducted at the prosecution's request. The experts found that Karen had lied and concealed the truth. The examination revealed that Karen showed no emotional response to her husband's death, raising doubts about her sincerity. The prosecutor questioned whether Karen had truly been a victim of domestic violence as she had claimed in her statement. This information provided insight into Karen's psychological profile. After weeks of waiting and many court hearings, the trial was finally over. The jury delivered a unanimous verdict after a lengthy period of silence and anticipation. Karen was found guilty of murdering Elias with exceptional cruelty and of causing Rolando's death through a particularly heinous process. As a result, she was sentenced to life in prison. Karen had attempted to evade punishment for the brutal murders that shocked the community and left many unanswered questions. Her plan to cremate the victims' bodies was likely a last-ditch effort to avoid accountability. However, the court and jury remained resolute, ultimately rendering a fair and just verdict. Karen's decision to harm her loved ones remains a puzzle. Despite having everything for a happy life, her motivations may be rooted in emotions like jealousy. This tragic case reminds us that even close relationships can conceal dark secrets, and genuine love and loyalty should always be the top priority. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Neha Varma. Megha Desh Pande lived with her 21-year-old daughter, Ashlesha, and her 70-year-old mother, Rohini, in a luxurious neighborhood called Srinagar in Indore. This city known for consistently ranking as one of the cleanest in India. The fact that they resided in Srinagar, an area predominantly inhabited by the wealthy, suggested that the Desh Pande family was financially well off. Megha worked for a multi-level marketing (MLM) company for a considerable time. MLM is also referred to as network marketing, direct selling, and pyramid selling. To understand how an MLM business works, imagine a pyramid structure. At the top is the company owner, when the owner recruits two individuals, and they join the company, it creates a network. These two individuals then recruit more people to join the company, and the process continues. The company generates profit from each new member or associate that joins, allowing the business owner to constantly earn income through the growth of their network. Before moving to Indore, Megha lived in Yuan, a city approximately 35 miles away, with her husband, Nanai Desh Pande. However, due to his job as a bank manager, Nanai remained in Yuan, while Megha relocated to Indore with her daughter and mother a few months ago. Thanks to Nanai's stable job and Megha's successful career in the MLM company, the Megha's family has a stable financial situation and does not have to worry about money. In the neighborhood where Megha lives, people are very united, and it is also very safe with very little crime. Residents have always felt safe, and nothing unusual has ever happened there until June 13, 2011, when that all changed. On that day, no one in Megha's family left the house until noon, and no one heard their voices. A neighbor walked by Megha's house, and then she noticed a very strange thing. Footprints made of bloody stains led around the house, alarming her. She quickly notified the landlord, and the landlord then knocked on the door several times, but received no answer. Next, the landlord attempted to look inside through a window and was met with a very scary sight. 3 women were lying on the floor, their bodies covered in blood. Overcome with fear, he quickly alerted the police. The brutal murder of the Megha family members sent shockwaves through the community. By the time the police arrived at the crime scene, a large crowd had gathered outside their house. Upon entering the house, the police officers were met with a gruesome scene: the bodies of 3 women who had been brutally murdered. The police secured the crime scene and began their investigation. During this process, they found 2 bullet shells inside the house. One of the shells was linked to the gunshot wound that killed Megha, who had been shot in the head. However, despite a thorough search of the house lobby, the police were unable to locate the second bullet. A forensic team was called in to collect evidence from the crime scene. The bodies of the 3 women were then sent for post-mortem examination. As news of the murder spread, the entire city of Indore was left reeling in shock. The post-mortem report later revealed that 21-year-old Ashlesha and her 70-year-old grandmother, Rohini, had died from excessive bleeding caused by multiple stab wounds inflicted on their bodies. This report confirms that Megha was the only one shot to death. However, it raises a crucial question for the police: if 2 bullet shells were found, who was the second shot intended for? Megha's husband, along with the public, also started pressuring the police, demanding that they solve the case quickly so that the criminals are held accountable to the fullest extent of Indian law. This makes it even more urgent for the police to solve this case quickly. To do this, several teams were deployed to investigate. One team analyzed the call detail records of the 3 victims, Megha, Ashlesha, Rohini. Another team re-examined the forensic evidence. Initially, the police have collected a blood sample from the crime scene that didn't belong to Megha, Ashlesha, or Rohini. The police then detained and questioned various suspects from the surrounding area. Based on the evidence collected, the police have recorded this as a robbery and murder case. Further investigation of the phone records revealed that there was a phone number that had called Megha multiple times, and she had long conversations with this number. After obtaining detailed information about the number, the police found it was registered to a girl named Neha. They then began tracking her location to gather potential leads in the case. One day, the police located Neha near an ATM in the area. They promptly sent a team to bring her to the police station for questioning. After being informed of the situation of the case, Neha was left astounded. She explained that she initially met Megha at a shopping mall. Then, Neha had bumped into Megha while rushing, causing Megha to drop some items. As Neha apologized and helped Megha gather her belongings, they engaged in conversation and developed a rapport. and Neha even driving Mega to her car, marking the start of their friendship. Neha also discovered that Mega worked for a multi-level marketing (MLM) company. After exchanging phone numbers, they occasionally spoke over the phone. Neha's interest in the MLM business model led her to discuss it with Mega. However, the police found Neha's story suspicious, as her words didn't match her body language. As a result, the police questioned her forcefully and in a confrontational manner. Neha initially tries to hide her dishonesty, but under intense police questioning, she confesses. She then told the police a story that even surprised them. Neha Varma was a 23-year-old beautician who was known for her beauty and cheerful personality. Her father, a van driver, had limited financial resources, making it challenging for Neha to pursue her dreams. During this time, Neha met Rahul, and they developed a close friendship that blossomed into romance. At 24, Rahul was handsome but also struggled financially. Despite their similar financial situations, they deeply loved each other and wanted to get married. They sought opportunities to rapidly build wealth and achieve a comfortable lifestyle, securing their financial future. Neha and Mega met for the first time. Mega, who had a taste for expensive jewelry, was wearing gold ornaments that day. Neha perceived Mega as wealthy due to her jewelry and decided to approach her. Neha started approaching Mega by deliberately bumping into her, start chatting and befriending her. Neha started thinking about robbing Mega after getting to call her through phone calls. Neha then shared her plan with her boyfriend Rahul, telling him that Mega was extremely wealthy, making her an easy target. Rahul liked the idea, as it would solve their financial problems and allow them to live comfortably once they were married. Following this, Rahul started making plans to kill Mega and the two other women in her house. He thought that if he could get away with the crime without anyone finding out, no one would be able to file a complaint against them. Rahul finalized his plan but needed a gun to carry it out. Luckily for him, his friend Manoj, who was close to both Rahul and Neha, had a gun. Rahul had been planning to kill Mega and her family, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to execute his plan. That moment arrived on June 13, 2011. On that day, Neha called Mega and expressed interest in joining her multi-level marketing scheme, MLM. Unbeknownst to Mega, this was a ruse orchestrated by Rahul. Neha arrived at Mega's house early in the morning, and Mega asked her to fill out a membership form. However, Neha didn't know what information to fill in the form, so she asked Mega if she could get a friend arrive to help her. Mega agreed, and Neha then called Rahul, as planned. Rahul and his accomplice, Manoj, were waiting for Neha's call, and they immediately went to Mega's house. Once Rahul entered the house, he pulled out a gun and shot Mega at point-blank range, killing her instantly. The sound of this gunshot reached Ashlesha and Rohini, causing both of them to run into the lobby. Rahul and Manoj initially intimidated Ashlesha and her grandmother Rohini, demanding Ashlesha's ATM card and PIN in exchange for their lives. Ashlesha, hoping to be spared, quickly handed over the card. However, Rahul and Manoj were aware that they had been seen, and this posed a risk to their. To eliminate witnesses, Rahul attempted to shoot Ashlesha but accidentally shot himself in the foot instead. Manoj then took a knife and brutally murdered both Ashlesha and Rohini. After the killings, the three thieves, including Neha, Rahul, Manoj, stole approximately 1 million Indian rupees and valuable jewelry worth up to $500,000 rupees and Ashlesha's ATM card. Rahul, along with Neha and Manoj, had planned to use the ATM card to withdraw cash. However, their plan failed when Neha was arrested by the police. Rahul to file an untrue report at the police station and was arrested, but was later hospitalized due to gunshot wounds. The police matched Rahul's blood sample from the crime scene to one taken from him. It was a match. The police quickly solved the case and arrested the suspects. Following a prolonged and contentious court case, the three defendants, Neha, Rahul, Manoj, were sentenced to death by hanging in December 2013. The district court handed down this severe punishment due to the heinous nature of the crime, in which the defendants killed women from 3 generations of the Mega family. Physical evidence, including blood-stained clothing, knives, and jewelry, was recovered from the defendants by the police. One of the defendants, Neha, is currently serving her sentence in the central jail. Notably, she has been teaching a beauty parlor course to fellow female inmates while incarcerated. This case was notable for being the first time the district court had imposed a death sentence on a woman. Neha and Rahul's desire for quick wealth led them to get involved in a life of crime. It is fortunate that the perpetrators were caught. If Mega had not worn her valuable jewelry to the mall and had not trusted a stranger she met there, the outcome may have been different. Mega's husband, Nana Desh Pande, was pleased with the court's decision and praised the judiciary and the police for their efforts. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jared Bridegan. Jared Bridegan was born in 1989 in Florida to a modest family as the second of 2 sons. He and his older brother Adam were close from a young age and grew up together. Their parents were devoted members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As a teenager, Jared met Mallory Bowden at church and they developed a romantic relationship. She would later call him her first true love. However, their religious beliefs discouraged cohabitation before marriage, so when Jared graduated from high school in 2007, they went their separate ways. He moved to Utah to attend college. In 2009, at the age of 20, Jared met his future first wife, Shannon Gardner, at a friend's birthday party. She was 2 years older than him and came from a wealthy family. Shannon Gardner was born in 1987 to Starling and Shelley Gardner, founders of Stampin' Up!, a successful company that produced and sold craft items. By 2010, the family business, based in Salt Lake City, generated $100 million in annual revenue. Shannon's sister, Sarah, holds a management position in the company. As a member of a wealthy family, Shannon grew up with luxuries and never had to work as a chef, despite being trained in the profession. After meeting her partner, they got engaged just a few months later and married in a lavish ceremony in Salt Lake City in early 2010, with her family covering all expenses. Their religious beliefs, which discouraged cohabitation and long engagements, influenced their quick decision to marry. After the wedding, they settled in Utah, where Shannon's parents helped them buy a comfortable home worth around $1 million. They, Shannon and Jared, traveled extensively, sharing their luxurious lifestyle on social media. They received significant financial support from Shannon's parents, who gave them around $10,000 monthly and allowed them to use their accounts freely. After Jared graduated, his in-laws gave him $100,000 to start his own business. In 2013, they had twins, Abigail and Liam, and initially moved to Connecticut. However, when Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues, they relocated to Florida, following doctors' advice that the sea air would be beneficial for his health. They bought a comfortable 2-story home near the coast in Ponte Vedra Beach. Shannon managed a popular blog, presenting herself as a devoted wife, caring mother, chef, and fitness enthusiast who loved travel and sports. She regularly visited the gym, prompting Jared to surprise her by hiring a personal trainer. After moving, their marriage began to fall apart, and they soon found themselves in the midst of a scandalous divorce. Despite their efforts to put on a brave face, it was clear that their relationship was troubled. One of the main sources of tension was their differing levels of commitment to their religion. Shannon had grown disillusioned with their faith and stopped attending church, while her husband remained a devout follower. This disparity led to arguments, misunderstandings, and ultimately to the breakdown of their marriage. Shannon grew unhappy with Jared, feeling he was lazy, had gained weight, and wasn't putting enough effort into his business despite taking online courses. However, Jared eventually got a job at Microsoft and worked his way up to a senior manager role. Despite this success, the couple grew apart and started arguing frequently. Things took a turn for the worse when Jared found out about intimate messages between Shannon and her personal fitness trainer. Although Shannon denied having an affair, the trainer admitted to it in a conversation with Jared. Jared then reached out to Mellor Bowden, saying his wife had become distant and emotionally attached to her trainer, but he was willing to forgive her and save their family for the sake of their children. In 2015, after almost 6 years of marriage, the couple started a bitter and dramatic divorce process. They fought over their shared assets and custody rights for their children, with Jared accusing Shannon of infidelity, which she denied, saying the marriage had simply lost its spark. Shannon retaliated by accusing Jared of being cruel and offensive. Shannon and Jared disagreed on how to divide their assets, including their home, cars, and bank accounts. Shannon claimed that most of what they had was given to her by her parents or purchased with their money, since Jared had only recently started working. Jared argued that he was entitled to at least half of their Florida home. The couple also disputed custody of their twins. Shannon accused Jared of trying to manipulate the children against her when he spent time with them, allegedly coaching them on what to say about her and recording their statements to use in court. In response, Jared accused Shannon of invading his privacy by installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and tracking his movements with a GPS device in his car. Shannon sought full custody of the children and ownership of their seaside home. She claimed Jared threatened to use their children's trust funds for himself. Jared countered by accusing Shannon of tax evasion, alleging that she worked off the books at her parents' company and received large sums of money. After their divorce, Jared and Shannon continued to argue in court for nearly 7 years, despite having shared custody of their children. During this time, they both started new families and had more kids. Jared met Christina, a co-worker at Microsoft, in 2016. At first, their relationship was professional, but they eventually became romantically involved. Christina moved to Florida to be with Jared, and they got married in the fall of 2017. They had their first child, a daughter named Bexley, in February 2019, and their son London was born in August 2021. Shannon got married again in 2018 to Mario Fernandez, a real estate businessman who is 1 year younger than her. They had a son named Michael that same year. The family lived in the same house where Shannon used to live with her first husband, Jared, which was a point of contention during their court battles. Despite the new families, the conflicts between Jared and Shannon did not subside, and they continued to file lawsuits against each other with new demands. Jared wanted to restrict Mario's access to the twins when Shannon was not around, while he wanted his new wife, Christina, to play a bigger role in raising his older children. The last court hearing between Jared and Shannon, which took place 4 months before Jared's death, was extremely tense. They made more accusations against each other and fought over their property rights. Shannon claimed that Jared was preventing her from using the family's more comfortable vehicle to transport the children because he was more concerned with embarrassing her than with their convenience and safety. After the court granted Shannon exclusive rights to the larger vehicle and ordered Jared to pay her $600 in compensation, they established a routine for their children's care. As part of this agreement, Jared picked up their twins on Wednesdays for a family dinner, which often included their younger sister Bexley. Christina sometimes joined them, but after having her baby, London, she prioritized spending time with him and avoided leaving him with babysitters. On Wednesday, February 22, 2022, Jared followed this routine, taking the children to Coastal Cafe after picking them up. After dinner and a walk, he dropped the twins back at their mother's house and headed home, taking his usual 40-minute route. This route included a stretch of road without streetlights that was quite deserted. As he drove cautiously, aware of his 3-year-old daughter sleeping in her car seat, he encountered an unexpected obstacle around 9 p.m. when the sun had set. Suddenly, in the headlights, he spotted a tire lying in his lane. Jared stopped his car to move a tire that was in the road, so he turned on his hazard lights and got out of the vehicle. That's when someone started shooting at him. The attacker was very close and shot Jared multiple times with deadly accuracy before running away. Luckily, the child who was sleeping in the car was not hurt. A person who was nearby heard the shots and carefully approached the scene. They found Jared lying on the ground, bleeding badly. They immediately called the police and ambulance, but unfortunately, it was too late to save Jared. Christina, Jared's wife, had spoken to him just minutes before the attack. He told her he had just dropped off their kids and would be home in about 15 minutes. But when 30 minutes passed, then an hour, and Jared didn't come home, Christina started to worry. She tried calling him again, but this time a police officer answered and told her what had happened. The officer asked Christina to come to the police station in Jacksonville Beach right away. The investigation at the scene revealed that a tire on the road caused Jared's vehicle to stop. After getting out to remove the tire, he was shot. Fortunately, his 3-year-old daughter, who was sleeping in the car, was unharmed, suggesting she was not the shooter's target. The absence of stolen valuables, including a wallet with cash, phone, and tablet, ruled out robbery as a motive. When questioned about potential enemies, Christina mentioned Jared's first wife, Shannon, but declined to make accusations without solid evidence. Unfortunately, there was no surveillance footage due to the lack of cameras in the area. A witness reported hearing the shots, which broke the night's silence, followed by the sound of a vehicle speeding away, although nothing was visible in the darkness. Christina's hint that Shauna might be involved in the crime seemed reasonable at first, but detectives doubted she was directly responsible, given her strong alibi. She was at home with her husband, their twins, younger son, and visiting parents at the time of the incident. Instead, the police focused on reviewing nearby surveillance footage. The cameras showed an old dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident and reappearing a few minutes after the witness reported the shots. The police asked the public for help in identifying the suspicious vehicle. Jared's family made TV appeals, urging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. The first suspect was arrested, but Shauna and her current husband Mario repeatedly denied any involvement in the murder when questioned by detectives. Shauna openly admitted that her relationship with her ex-husband was complex, but insisted she would never wish harm on the father of her children. In media interviews, she shared how her 9-year-old twins reacted to the news of their father's death. Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours, while Liam was in shock and remained silent for a long time. It's notable that neither Jared's ex-spouse nor his older children attended his funeral. This was because Christina had made it clear to Shanana that she was not welcome at the ceremony, and Shanana had countered that if she couldn't attend, the twins wouldn't go to the burial either. Almost a year after Mr. Brand's murder, the first suspect was finally arrested in January 2023. The police had been secretive about their investigation, only disclosing that it required significant resources and effort. However, their persistence paid off when the dark blue Ford F-150 was involved in an accident and fled the scene before the police arrived. This breakthrough led to an arrest. The police chief and city prosecutor announced that 62-year-old Henry Teenon, an unemployed man with a criminal record, had been charged with several crimes, including second-degree premeditated murder, participating in a conspiracy to commit murder, and setting up an ambush that obstructed the victim. Teenon, hoping to receive a lighter sentence, agreed to cooperate with law enforcement and provide information about the crime. As a result, the criminal partnership began to fall apart, and news soon spread that Tenon had been renting a house with a friend owned by Mario Fernandez. After Tenon pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Mario, Mario was arrested. There were rumors that Shanana, Mario's wife and Tenon's former lover, was the mastermind behind the murder, allegedly motivated by her long-standing dislike for her then-husband. Despite strongly denying all accusations, Shanana eventually left town, relocating to Washington with her 3 children just a few months after her husband's arrest. Shanana Gardner Fernandez was arrested on August 17, 2023, at her Washington apartment on the same charges as her current husband. She was extradited to Florida to stand trial with her co-defendants. Her alleged motive was to avoid sharing custody of her 2 children with her ex-husband and to gain control of disputed assets due to complicated relationships. The legal case is ongoing, and all defendants are currently facing legal proceedings. Shanana's husband, Tenon, has pleaded guilty to all charges and is cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a lighter sentence. He is likely to face a minimum of 15 years in prison, which may be equivalent to a life sentence given his age. Mario Fernandez has partially admitted his guilt, but is refusing to testify against his wife, exercising his legal rights. Shanana Gardner Fernandez, however, denies all charges against her. Despite this, prosecutors are seeking the death penalty or life imprisonment without parole. Shanna's children are being taken care of by their grandparents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, as well as her sister, Sarah. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982, to her mother, Vicky. She had 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda, which makes Miranda the youngest child. As a child, Miranda idolized her older sister Katrina. She would often try on Katrina's clothes and use her makeup as she admired and wanted to emulate her. Over the years, the sisters developed a deep bond, eventually becoming more like best friends than siblings. When Katrina was young, her parents separated, and she lived with her mother in Maison Park, Illinois, a bedroom community outside the city. Those who knew her described Katrina as a kind-hearted and fun-loving individual. She cherished the holiday season and took great pleasure in giving gag gifts to her friends and family. Overall, Katrina was a happy and deeply involved member of her church. She had a strong desire to help others and was always willing to offer her time to anyone in need. Katrina was happy, yet she longed to find love. At the age of 20, she met Todd Smith at a bar and thought she had found her Prince Charming. Todd, a successful financial planner with his own business, was a single father of 3 daughters. Despite their differences, the couple quickly connected, and Todd's flexible work schedule allowed them to travel frequently. 3 years into their relationship, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. They planned an intimate ceremony in a local park, and Katrina was over the moon about their future together. She had grown to love her stepdaughters and was eager to build a bright future with Todd. Katrina's mother, Vicky, and her siblings, Chad and Miranda, adored Todd and thought he was a great guy. They trusted him to take care of Katrina and believed the couple was a perfect match. Following their marriage, Katrina and Todd Smith settled in Maison Park, where they started building their life together. On October 20, 2012, Katrina, 30, called her mother, Vicky, and told her she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, Katrina mentioned she would visit her mother for dinner on October 24th and had some news to share. Vicky sensed something was amiss but wasn't sure what it could be. Before hanging up, Vicky promised to cook Katrina's favorite dish, chicken and dumplings. However, she would never get the chance to fulfill that promise, as Katrina disappeared just days after the call, and Vicky would never see her again. At 5 p.m. on October 23rd, Todd Smith contacted 911 to report his wife Katrina's disappearance. Todd told the dispatcher Katrina was house-sitting for a friend and that he hadn't been able to reach her for hours. He said the house was empty when he drove to where she was staying. Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, grew concerned when they learned of her disappearance. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help search for his sister. On the night of the 23rd, a concerned local resident contacted the police to report an abandoned vehicle near Rock River, stating that it was not parked on the roadside, but rather in an easement, giving the impression it had been hastily deserted. Upon responding to the scene, the police officers ran the license plate and discovered it was registered to Katrina Smith. Following a thorough examination of the vehicle, the officers found no signs of a struggle or any indication of Katrina's presence. When Vicky, Katrina's mother, learned that her daughter's car had been found abandoned in an unfamiliar area, she was convinced that something terrible had befallen Katrina. To Vicky, it was the only logical explanation. If Katrina's car was in that location, someone must have taken her and left the vehicle there. After Katrina's car was found, her case was reclassified as a missing person, and a large-scale search effort was launched. On October 12th at 11 p.m., Todd Smith was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for a formal interview. During the interview, Todd told the detective that he had last seen Katrina on October 22nd. According to Todd, Katrina came home briefly to do her laundry because she had a big job interview scheduled for the next day. While the laundry was in progress, Todd said Katrina left to go to the mall to make a purchase and returned home by 8:30 p.m. However, Todd added that Katrina then left the house again, saying she had one more stop to make before returning to the house she was house-sitting for a friend the following day. After Katrina was reported missing, Todd made an emotional appeal to the media, pleading for her safe return. Overcome with emotion, Todd broke down in tears as he expressed his desperation to find his wife. Katrina's brother, Chad, who was in Army training in Oklahoma, arrived in Illinois and joined the search effort. At the park, Chad took charge, using his military training to organize the volunteers who had come to search for Katrina. He created a map, divided the volunteers into teams, and assigned them areas to search. Meanwhile, the police also combed the park, using dogs and a systematic search pattern to ensure that no potential evidence was missed. Katrina's mother, Vicky, distributed missing person flyers throughout the town, posting them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts. She aimed to raise awareness and inform as many people as possible about Katrina's disappearance. However, overwhelmed by grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky couldn't bring herself to participate in the search. Chad encouraged Todd to stay strong, urging him to stay focused on finding Katrina during this difficult time. Meanwhile, an officer investigating the area where Katrina's car was found discovered her purse. Further down the road, the officer found more of her belongings, including her cell phone and blood-stained towels, suggesting that someone had been getting rid of her property as they drove away from her abandoned vehicle. The officers conducted a thorough investigation into Katrina's disappearance, seeking to understand every facet of her life. To do this, they explored her relationships outside of her marriage, potential involvement in gambling or drugs, and documented her daily routine. Katrina's friends and family were extensively interviewed, and they all described her as a kind, responsible person who prioritized her responsibilities and avoided dubious activities. According to their testimonies, Katrina was dedicated to her work and had a strong work ethic. She showed no signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior and was known as a devoted spouse and hardworking individual who maintained her integrity. During the search for Katrina, a woman came forward with an intriguing tip. She claimed to have seen a blue vehicle, matching the description of Katrina's car, stopped on a bridge over Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk of the car was open, and the woman saw someone kneeling behind it, although she couldn't provide any details about the person's gender or race. The officers suspected foul play might have led Katrina to end up in the river, but they needed more concrete evidence to back up this idea. They decided to investigate further to identify a potential motive for harming Katrina. Although Katrina and her husband Todd seemed to have a happy marriage, the authorities were suspicious of Todd and thought he might be involved in her disappearance, suspecting that there could be hidden conflicts or secrets in their relationship that weren't immediately clear. As the police continued to investigate Katrina's disappearance, they received a tip that led them to a new suspect. They discovered that a local boy had been obsessed with Katrina, an obsession that started earlier that year when Katrina told her friends about a teenage boy from her church who was fixated on her. Allegedly, the boy had spied on Katrina through her bedroom window, and Katrina had become increasingly anxious due to his behavior. However, the voyeurism stopped when the boy left for college. 3 days into the search for Katrina, her cell phone, which was being examined at the crime lab, yielded crucial clues. The phone proved to be a treasure trove of information for the investigating officers. By analyzing Katrina's cell phone, they gained valuable insights into her text messages, including incoming and outgoing calls, pictures, videos, and even her GPS location, providing a detailed record of her activities. The data from Katrina's phone gave the police a wealth of clues, enabling them to build a clearer picture of her activities. They discovered that she was having an affair with a co-worker, Guy Gabriel, which started innocently but grew stronger until they became romantically involved. Detectives' background check on Guy Gabriel showed a disturbing past: domestic violence and threatening texts to Katrina, demanding she leave her husband Todd for him. With a violent history and menacing messages, Guy became the prime suspect in Katrina's disappearance, suspected of reacting violently when she refused him. Katrina and Todd were believed to have the ideal marriage, making the discovery of her infidelity a shock to everyone. Todd, who had been unaware of his wife's affair until the police investigation, was devastated by the news of her unfaithfulness. During the course of the investigation, Guy Gabriel was questioned by police at their department. While he did admit to having had an affair with Katrina, he denied any involvement in her disappearance and claimed to have been at work on the night she went missing. During their investigation into Katrina's affair with Guy Gabriel, the police uncovered an incident that had taken place 2 weeks prior to her disappearance. According to witnesses, a black Volkswagen Jetta sped through the parking lot of the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked during their lunch break. The driver, whose face was masked, tossed a stack of flyers through the open sunroof, which scattered at the feet of the employees who had gathered. The flyers contained a derogatory comment about Katrina's relationship with Guy Gabriel, but the identity of the driver remained unknown. When the police interviewed Katrina's hairstylist, she disclosed that Katrina had confided in her about feeling threatened and had expressed a desire to buy a gun for self-protection. Katrina had also shared her concerns that someone was tailing her and had even visited a store to have her phone checked for a potential tracking device. At the police garage, investigators processed Katrina's car as a crime scene and searched for evidence. They used luminol, a chemical that glows brightly when it comes into contact with blood. The luminol test revealed a significant amount of blood in the trunk of Katrina's car. Later, a body was found in the river by investigators. They pulled it from the water, but decomposition had set in severely, making it hard to identify. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to figure out how she died. By comparing the body's dental records to Katrina Smith's, the medical examiner confirmed the remains belonged to her. The autopsy showed that Katrina's death was caused by a severe blow to the head. Katrina's family was devastated when they learned that her body had been found and that she had been murdered by blunt force trauma to her head. Her mother, Vicky, was in shock and couldn't bear the thought that her daughter had been violently beaten. The police had also investigated a teenage boy who was suspected of stalking Katrina, but they cleared him as a suspect after verifying his alibi. He had been on campus at his college during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder, so the police focus shifted to Katrina's boyfriend, Guy Gabriel, who was outside of her marriage. Guy Gabriel provided an alibi for the night Katrina vanished, stating he was at work, and his managers verified this with his time card. Several co-workers also confirmed they saw him at the workplace, clearing him of suspicion in Katrina's disappearance and murder. The police wanted to know what Guy thought about who might have hurt Katrina. Guy told them that Katrina's husband, Todd, was controlling and that he had warned Katrina to get out of the marriage. According to Guy, Todd's behavior was potentially volatile and could have led to violence. As the police investigated Katrina's marriage to Todd, they uncovered troubling facts. Katrina had told multiple people she wanted a divorce and had met with a divorce lawyer the day before she disappeared. Although she claimed to be house-sitting at a friend's condo, the police found that she had actually moved in due to her separation from Todd. After gathering information and conducting interviews, the police began to suspect Todd of being involved in the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. Their suspicion intensified when they discovered that Todd had recently test-driven a black VW Jetta, the same model and color as the car linked to the incident. The timing of these events also raised suspicions, as Todd allegedly took the test drive around the same time the incident occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that Todd was not only the prime suspect in her murder investigation, but had also been taken into custody, they were shocked and disbelieving. They had grown to love and respect Todd, considering him part of the family. The news left everyone feeling devastated and betrayed. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected, as the realization that her son-in-law could be responsible for her daughter's murder made her physically ill. She had always trusted and respected Todd and could not imagine that he was capable of such a heinous crime. The police discovered that Todd's financial investment company was facing legal troubles, which shed light on his financial situation. As Todd was unemployed, Katrina was the primary earner for the family. This led the police to suspect that Todd may have had a motive to murder his wife, as he would gain control of the family's finances if she left him and their daughters. To gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for the couple's home. During the search, investigators found a baseball bat in the garage with traces of blood on it. The bat's discovery was significant, as Katrina's injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, suggesting it could be the murder weapon. The investigators took a DNA test to confirm their suspicions about it. The test results showed that Katrina's blood, which established a strong link between the murder weapon and the victim. Additionally, the investigators found a large area under the car that had been thoroughly cleaned, indicating that someone had tried to remove evidence. Closer examination revealed that the blood stains found under the vehicle matched Katrina's DNA profile, providing further evidence. 30 days after Katrina Smith's murder, her husband, Todd Smith, was arrested and charged with her murder, bringing relief to her family. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. The prosecution presented its case to the jury, reconstructing the events of the night Katrina was murdered. It emerged that Katrina had recently consulted a divorce lawyer to discuss her marital issues, which became a key point for the prosecution. They argued that Katrina's decision to seek legal help was evidence of a troubled relationship, which motivated Todd to commit the crime. According to the state, Katrina went to Todd's house to do her laundry in preparation for a job interview she had scheduled for the next morning. During this visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina made it clear to Todd that their marriage was truly over. The prosecution argued that this declaration led Todd to react violently. While Katrina was in the garage, the state alleged that Todd, in a fit of rage, grabbed a baseball bat and mercilessly beat her to death. After making sure Katrina was dead, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. He then drove to a remote location called Rock River, where he disposed of her body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. Following the disposal of Katrina's body, Todd abandoned her car on the side of the road and walked back home to wash away any evidence. He got rid of her cell phone and the bloody towels he had used to clean up. The jurors found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Zoe Hastings. Zoe Hastings was born on November 20, 1996, in Kansas. She was the eldest of 5 children, with 3 younger sisters and a brother. Zoe was always available to assist her parents in caring for her siblings, willing to cancel any plans if her parents needed a helping hand. Her parents were deeply religious, so the family spent a considerable amount of time at church. At some point, they relocated to Dallas, where Zoe enrolled in a high school that emphasized creativity and the arts. She had a passion for drawing and also enjoyed participating in school theatrical performances. In her spare time, Zoe worked at an art studio in Dallas. She also worked as a lifeguard at a local pool during the summer after graduating from high school. Zoe had the opportunity to attend some of the top universities in the country. However, she chose to postpone her education and dedicate some time to her church. In October 2015, when Zoe was 18 years old, she was preparing to go on a mission trip for her church and was eagerly looking forward to the journey. On Sunday, October 11th, she planned to attend the Sunday service where they would discuss some details of their upcoming trip. Zoe took the family minivan, promised her parents she'd be back for dinner, and left her house around 4:40 p.m. The church was only a few miles away, and the parents expected her to return around 6:30. However, as time passed, Zoe didn't come back for dinner, which was quite unusual. They sent her several messages, but there was no response. They also tried calling her again with no luck. After some time, they started calling her friends and family members, thinking Zoe might have visited someone after the service, but none of them had seen her that evening. Finally, her parents decided to call the church, and they encountered an unexpected turn of events. Zoe never showed up there. The parents became even more worried and decided to contact the police. Such behavior was highly unusual for their daughter, as she always told them where she was going and never disappeared without any explanation. They called 911, but the officers did not come to their house to take a missing person report, so the parents drove to the police station themselves, filed a report, and began searching for their daughter. They retraced the entire route from home to the church several times, but couldn't find any trace of Zoe. This went on almost all night, and as morning approached, her mother suddenly had an idea. She recalled that her daughter had an iPhone tracking app, which gave them access to her location. They discovered that her phone was just a few hundred yards from the church, near a small creek across the road from it. The parents immediately went to that spot, and to their horror, they saw a lot of police cars, as well as an ambulance and emergency services approaching. One of the officers explained to them that there had been a car accident a few hours ago. The police received a call from a person who was walking their dog, and at one point, a man approached them, saying that there had been a car accident near the creek and a woman was injured. They both ran to the scene, where the witness found this woman in a pool of blood and called 911. Police officers quickly identified the deceased. It was Zoe Hastings. However, they immediately realized that she didn't die as a result of the accident. It was obvious from the first look that she had been a victim of murder. Zoe lay on the ground a few hundred yards from the minivan, which was partially submerged in the creek. There was a lot of blood near her body, and police officers noticed multiple cuts on her neck. Zoe's dress was pulled up, and her underwear was rolled down, leading detectives to assume that the killer likely assaulted her. Zoe's parents tried to approach their daughter, but the officers stopped them, saying they shouldn't witness such a gruesome scene. While investigating the crime scene, officers found several clues. All the minivan doors except the driver's were locked, which could indicate that the perpetrator either drove the vehicle themselves or approached Zoe directly at the scene. A few yards from the creek, near an embankment under the bridge, police found a blood-covered knife, which was likely used as the murder weapon. Zoe's smartphone data assisted the investigators in establishing the timeline of case. The GPS data showed that she arrived at the creek at 5:01 p.m., only 20 minutes after leaving her home, and she was apparently killed within a few minutes of arriving there. The police also discovered that after leaving home, Zoe made one stop. She went to a DVD rental service near her local Walgreens to return a movie. While experts examined the victim's body and all the available evidence, detectives decided to look for potential witnesses who were at the store or nearby at the same time as Zoe. After speaking with dozens of people, they managed to find two potential witnesses. The first witness was Lester Clark, who worked at a tattoo parlor next to the store on that day. Around 4:45 p.m., he went to buy cigarettes and saw a woman near the DVD rental service. Shortly after, Lester saw her returning to the parking lot and approaching a white minivan. She tried to open the door, but at that moment, a man approached her, stopped the door with his hand, and said something to her. After that, the woman got into the car and moved to the passenger seat, and the man got into the driver's seat, and they drove away. Lester said that the woman did indeed resemble Zoe, although he didn't think much of the incident as nothing obviously bad seemed to happen. The second witness was a homeless man named Gary Whitman, who shared a similar story. Around 4:45 p.m., when he was across the street from the parking lot, he saw a woman heading towards the white minivan. Suddenly, a man approached her from behind and prevented her from getting into the car. He then took something out of his pocket and showed it to the woman. After that, she got into the car, moved to the passenger seat, and the man got into the driver's seat and drove away. Gary provided a similar description of the suspect and added that the situation struck him as highly suspicious. He went into the store and asked the clerk to call 911, but it's unclear if the clerk complied with his request, as police found no records of this call. While investigators interviewed witnesses, experts made several discoveries. The forensic pathologist examined the victim's body and found traces of male semen, but the amount was so small that conducting a full DNA analysis was simply impossible. This only confirmed that the perpetrator had sexually assaulted the victim before the murder. Investigators also examined the victim's car and couldn't find any foreign fingerprints on either the doors or the steering wheel. Based on witness statements, the suspect could have driven Zoe away from the store parking lot in her minivan, which caught the detectives off guard. However, they didn't rule out the possibility that the killer may have simply wiped down the steering wheel and door handle after the murder. Several hairs were also found on Zoe's body, but experts couldn't extract a full DNA sample from them as they were too small. However, when they examined the knife found near the crime scene, they finally had a breakthrough. A DNA sample was discovered on it, which was immediately uploaded to the FBI database, and police got a match. The sample belonged to 34-year-old Antonio Cochran, a man with a lengthy criminal history dating back to his teenage years. He had been arrested for thefts, assaults, home invasions, and was also suspected of numerous other crimes. The year before these events, in 2014, a 17-year-old daughter of his girlfriend accused Antonio of sexual assault. According to her, he offered her a ride, but when she was in the car, Antonio took her to a wooded area, threatening to kill her if she tried to escape. There, he assaulted her, and the man was arrested. He claimed they had consensual sex, and the case went to court. However, during the trial, the prosecution couldn't provide enough evidence to prove his guilt, so Antonio was found not guilty. With his DNA found on the knife, police identified Antonio as the prime suspect, and he was arrested. During the interrogation, he repeatedly denied any involvement in the murder, so the detectives focused their efforts on finding more evidence. The experts took a DNA sample from Antonio and tried to compare it with the semen and semen found on the victim's body. But since both pieces of evidence were too small to extract a full sample, experts decided to try a different type of analysis. They were able to generate an approximate profile and determine if it definitely did not match the chosen DNA. In other words, this method operates on the principle of exclusion, but it does not yield any precise results and cannot be used as a proof of guilt. They compared these partial profiles from the hair and semen with the suspect's DNA and concluded that their similarity couldn't be excluded. Meanwhile, detectives examined Antonio's smartphone and found several interesting text messages. Putting them together, it became clear that on the day of the murder, he was in a very troubled state of mind. At 1:48 a.m., the day before Zoe's death, he texted a friend he lived with, saying he was moving out and he would never see him again. On the next day, at 2:07 p.m., he texted his ex-girlfriend, telling her that his stepmother died, and he mentioned she died right in front of him, and he was finding it difficult to cope with the loss. Over the next hour, Antonio texted another woman twice, stating he had been drinking all night, driving around the city, and crying. These were his final messages before Zoe's death. Later that evening, at 9:30 p.m., he texted his friend again, expressing confusion about what to do with his life and how things had recently taken a turn for the worse. The next day, he sent another message to his ex-girlfriend, saying his life is over and she would soon find out why. Examining his browser search history, detectives found that Antonio had visited local news websites over 30 times before his arrest, specifically checking the crime sections. 5 of those visits were directly related to articles about Zoe's murder. They also noticed that before her death, he rarely visited news sites. Police only found one page in his browsing history related to gang activity. Antonio's smartphone provided the detectives with another lead. Experts obtained GPS data from a cell phone provider and discovered that at 4:34 p.m., his phone connected to a tower covering the area where the store was located. This coincided with the time Zoe was there, but this data wasn't considered strong evidence. It only indicated that his phone was within a few miles of the tower. Nevertheless, it suggested that Antonio arrived in the area just minutes before Zoe left the parking lot. His home was quite far, and throughout the day, his phone had been connected to a different nearby tower. Detectives also learned that Antonio had started a new job at a grocery store just 3 days before the incident. On Monday, the day after the murder, he didn't show up for his shift without giving any explanation. Despite the extensive list of circumstantial evidence against Antonio, the only strong evidence remained the suspect's DNA on the handle of the knife. However, this could have posed a problem, as such evidence alone is often insufficient for a conviction, because merely holding a knife doesn't prove the act of murder. For instance, he could have used the knife under different circumstances, and someone else might have used it to commit the crime. But detectives couldn't find any other evidence, so they decided to proceed with the case and take it to court. The prosecution presented its version of what happened on that day. When Zoe returned to the parking lot to her car, Antonio approached her, pulled out a knife from his pocket, and threatened her to get in the car. He then took the driver's seat himself and drove away. Based on the messages sent by the suspect before the murder, he was in a distressed emotional state due to the death of a relative and had consumed a significant amount of alcohol. According to the investigators' version, he decided to abduct the victim with the intention of assaulting her. He chose Zoe randomly because she happened to be in the parking lot at that moment, and Antonio simply saw an opportunity to commit the crime. Antonio drove to a nearby creek located in a low-lying, tree-surrounded area, making it difficult to see from any direction. There, he forced the victim out of the car, assaulted her, and inflicted 6 stab wounds to her neck. He then got back into the car and attempted to drive it into the creek, possibly to conceal any remaining evidence in the vehicle. However, the car only partially submerged in the water, so Antonio could have wiped the steering wheel and door handle clean of his fingerprints, and fled the scene. According to the testimony of the first witness, he saw a man who looked similar returning to the store's parking lot on foot that evening. The defense argued that the majority of the evidence could hardly be considered even circumstantial. For instance, the partial analysis of hair and semen only indicated that Antonio couldn't be excluded as the source of these samples, but didn't conclusively prove his involvement. Regarding the DNA on the knife, the defense seized upon the fact that this evidence alone didn't establish the fact of the murder. According to their version, Antonio could have come into contact with the knife under different circumstances before working at the store, where he had a job at a movie theater and sometimes had to collect various items left behind by visitors, including knives. However, no evidence was found to support this version, and if someone else had taken the knife from the theater and used it to commit the murder, they would have had to somehow avoid erasing Antonio's DNA from the handle, which would have been quite a challenging task. The defense tried to challenge the credibility of the second witness, Gary, who was a homeless man. They found out that he had an arrest warrant for breaking the conditions of his parole. The defense wanted to remove his testimony from the case, but the prosecution disagreed. They said that Gary coming forward willingly despite the arrest warrant showed his desire to help. Gary himself said he just wanted to do the right thing, even though he knew he would be arrested for it. Antonio's lawyers also tried to convince the jury that at the time of Zoe's murder, their client was elsewhere, helping a friend, but no substantial evidence supporting this version was presented. Initially, the prosecution sought the death penalty for Antonio, but during the trial, it became clear that with the available evidence, this would be highly problematic. Therefore, they abandoned these plans. After prolonged deliberation, the jurors eventually found Antonio guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Zoe's parents thanked the investigators and all the participants in the trial for achieving justice for their daughter. Her father also shared that from a young age, he had warned all his children about the dangers the world might pose to them, and he had exerted all his efforts to protect them. But his eldest daughter was abducted just a few hundred yards from their home, and he couldn't do anything to prevent it. Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Savannah Greywind. On the morning of Saturday, August 19, 2017, Norberta Greywind watched her 22-year-old pregnant daughter Savannah struggle up the stairs to their third-floor apartment. It was a hot day, and Savannah, who was 8 months pregnant, could barely walk on her swollen legs. A few hours later, William Ho, the boyfriend of Brooke Cruz, the same neighbor who had invited Savannah over, entered the apartment. Inside, he found Brooke scrubbing the bathroom. Savannah's bloody body lay on the floor. There was also a basin with a baby in it on top of the toilet lid. When William saw this, Brooke held out the infant to him and said, "This is our baby. This is our family. Please help me." In a move that defied all logic, William helped clean up the blood. He carried bags of bloody towels and clothes out of the apartment. They wrapped bags around Savannah's body, securing them with duct tape and ropes before later disposing of her corpse. Broken families and death marked this tragic event, coinciding with a birth. William Hone told his co-workers that his spouse had given birth to a little girl named Phoenix the day after these events took place. In an ironic twist, the couple who took Savannah's life also named her daughter after a mythological bird known for dying and being reborn. In an interview later on, Brooke's boyfriend described his short days with Heisley Joe, the name given by her family, as beautiful days. He remarked how that baby made him feel like part of a happy little family for just 2 days. Savannah Greywind was born on August 9, 1995 in Burke County, North Dakota. Her father is an ordinary white American, while her mother belongs to the Spirit Lake Sioux Indian tribe. Including herself, she had 2 brothers, Joy and Casey, and a younger sister named Kayla. Norberta and Joe, Savannah's parents, were always very proud of their children. The family resided in Fargo, North Dakota until Savannah turned 9 years old. In 200, they relocated to Spirit Lake Reservation. This place, located in the eastern part of the state, is a Native American Indian area. Savannah had a deep love for nature and animals, particularly horses. It was on the reservation that she met Ashton Mown. The pair first crossed paths when Savannah was 15 years old and remained inseparable ever since. When it became time for college, her family moved back to Fargo. Savannah found employment caring for the elderly at a nursing home while studying to become a nurse. She was preparing to sit for her exam in September. By this period, Savannah was an expectant mother with her first child on the way. She and Ashton secured an apartment by putting down a deposit and planned to move into their new home in early September. For now, she stayed with her parents on the bottom floor of a 7-unit, 3-story apartment building. In this same building, on the 3rd floor, resided Brooke Cruz, 38 years old, and William Hone, 33 years old. It is often said that no one is born evil. Rather, individuals are shaped by their experiences. Brooke Cruz cultivated within herself aspects capable of committing heinous acts of murder as she sought completeness by embracing all facets of her personality, including darker ones beyond her control. Drawn to mysticism since childhood, Brooke found a peculiar allure in crimes perpetrated by serial killers and high-IQ maniacs. As an adult, she professionally delved into criminal psychology to understand their mindset better. Brooke Cruz, the personality, which was characterized by impulsive behavior, anxious avoidance, and irascibility. By the time she reached 38, she was overwhelmed by depression, physical illness, and exhaustion from unhealthy relationships that included regular physical abuse further compounded her troubles. A disturbing fear of losing her partner because she couldn't conceive added to her stress. Brooke couldn't take it anymore. Darkness mingled within her mind. Killing a pregnant woman was seen by her as one way to get the infant she so desperately wanted. After her arrest, Brooke's apartment revealed much about her state of mind. It contained a stack of books on topics ranging from clinical criminal forensic and legal psychology to obstetrics. In a desk drawer were notes listing birthing kit items such as scissors, blades, clamps, and gloves, an infant cardiopulmonary resuscitation bag, and the hormone oxytocin. Brooklyn Cruz grew up in Florida's Bradenton, Sarasota neighborhood. Her parents divorced, leaving 7 children, including Brooke, to live with their mother. Recollections from one sister described their family life as quite good. However, diary entries kept by Brooke throughout later life painted a different picture, depicting a difficult childhood she struggled to forget. As she aged out of adolescence, Brooke's once caring and open-minded demeanor changed significantly. She became testy, but not aggressive, a troubled teenager among siblings who chose to stay with their father instead of their mother, who referred to him as a professional criminal. Life with her father didn't pan out well either. She subsequently found herself moving in and out of foster homes. From that point onward, the siblings lost touch with Brooke. They only learned that Brooke is the mother of at least 7 children through news coverage related to a shocking crime. At the age of 15, Brooke met Aaron Edwards. In 1995, when she was about 17, she gave birth to a child in County, Florida. She left the infant with the father and moved away. A court ordered her to pay child support, but Brooke did not honor the court order. She remembered her daughter when she turned 14. Their communication was limited to a few Facebook messages in the evenings. Brooke worked as a waitress at the Chinese Dragon restaurant and as a sales representative and animal specialist at Petland Pet Store in Bradenton, Florida. In early 2002, at age 23, Brooke was jailed in Missouri for falsifying documents but was released on parole on August 31, 2002. However, she was arrested again and sent to jail in Hidalgo County, Texas, for a parole violation. In 2006, at age 27, Brooke married Carl Cruz, a carpenter from Minnesota. During their marriage, she gave birth to 2 children and worked as an administrative assistant in her husband's carpentry shop. Unfortunately, the marriage lasted only 3 years due to infidelity on her part. They divorced in June 2009. According to documents, custody of the children went to Carl. Brooke then moved to California without explanation. Throughout her life, one consistent activity for Brooke was keeping diaries and recording events meticulously. After a tragic event, these entries became public. The diaries revealed numerous romantic relationships marked by initial enthusiasm, heart-shaped marks around the edges. She returned to her now ex-husband's house after a trip to California. She registered on a dating site and began to study psychology in earnest. On the dating site Tagged, the young woman met Andrew Murray, a chef from Katoomba, New South Wales, Australia. She decided to move to Australia in late 2011. In January 2012, an argument erupted over a child custody issue. During this conflict, Brooke grabbed a knife and attacked her ex-husband. Police arrested her and filed criminal charges. Brooke denied the knife attack, but chose not to wait for a court hearing. Instead, she fled to Australia using false immigration papers and married Andrew. This Australian marriage lasted exactly 6 months. Andrew discovered her American past, including her husband, children, and fake immigration papers. After uncovering these truths, his wife, according to Andrew, began threatening him with arrest for aiding and abetting. This led Andrew to go to the police himself and disclose everything just in case. Andrew recalled their marriage as being filled with conversations about maniacs. He later revealed that as early as 2012, Brooke was already obsessed with crime. She studied psychology and nursing and did her thesis on serial killers. From her words, she was always reading books about maniacs and crime and could tell you anything about them. Andrew observed that over time, Brooke became increasingly aggressive. It took 6 months and 10 days from her arrival until she returned to the US in October 2012. On September 22, 2012, Brooke made a diary entry noting that she had changed significantly for the better after returning from Australia. She engaged in a lengthy custody battle for her 2 children. She might have had a chance for a new life if she reconciled with Andrew Murray, but instead met William Hone in late 2012. William Hone had been convicted of child abuse months earlier after bringing his son to the hospital with a fractured skull near his right ear in January 2011. Brooke fell in love with this man who was twice divorced, had 2 kids, didn't pay child support, had anger issues, and was under a court order for no contact with his children. Brooke was full of energy and desire for change, aiming to be her new self, take care of the kids, and move forward positively, and found herself employment. In 2013, Brooke transformed a hobby into a profession by enrolling at Minnesota State University in Moorhead. There, she took courses like social behavior, physiological psychology, cognitive theory, psychology of deviant behavior, and directed research. She had a keen interest in the psychology of serial killers. Initially, her relationship with William was wonderful. However, over time, the relationship turned codependent with joint use of alcohol and illegal substances. Brooke believed she was controlling well, but felt progressively worse. She began avoiding her children, changed jobs due to conflicts with staff, and became more engrossed in her psychological research into humanity's darker sides. On December 23, 2014, she lost her custody battle. Judge Waldemar of the Otter Tail County Courthouse granted temporary sole physical and legal custody of the children to their father, Carl. That same day, Brooke suffered a panic attack and was taken to the hospital emergency room with a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, according to medical records. Years later, during her trial for murder, she would state that the events in 2014 marked a turning point in her life when she lost the ability to control her impulses and evaluate her actions clearly, though she did not specify what those events were. In January 2015, an entry appeared in her diary stating, "I feel like I started this relationship with a purse full of love coins, and slowly but surely, this purse is empty, and I just have nothing to give." She expressed that their intimacy wasn't the same as before. "About once a week he makes time for me. The intimacy lasts about 7 to 15 minutes. He doesn't care at all about my satisfaction." Brooke complained of his inattentiveness and became increasingly withdrawn. 5 months later, she was diagnosed with gallbladder disease. Physical and psychological deterioration set in. Brooke practically stopped leaving the house. In May 2016, police responded to a call. William Hahn had brutally beaten his girlfriend in the bathroom. He pleaded guilty to assault and was banned from approaching Brooke. 6 months later, police came again on a neighbor's call and found Hahn in Brooke's apartment. He pleaded guilty to violating the restraining order. They backed together after this, but a healthy moment never returned to their relationship. Brooke was unable to have children after an abortion in 2011. William, however, constantly demanded a child from her. In early 2017, after another fight, Brooke lied to Hahn about being pregnant to prevent him from leaving. She even emailed him a fake ultrasound picture and a photo of a positive pregnancy test. She found a recording of some random baby's heartbeat online and showed it to her partner, claiming it was their future child's heartbeat. By August 2017, they had another big fight. It became obvious there was no pregnancy. Since William had already told everyone about his future paternity and did not want to appear foolish, he literally demanded a child from his girlfriend. He mentioned the pregnant neighbor living 3 floors below them. Brooke Cruz later told police officers that she took William's demand as an ultimatum and believed he desired to take the baby away from Savannah, though this wasn't directly stated by him. Brooke had medical knowledge and began compiling a list of what she needed to induce labor. She anticipated and did whatever her young lover wanted her to do. On a Saturday afternoon in August, Brooke knocked on the door of a downstairs apartment and offered Savannah $20 for serving as a model for a dress Brooke was supposedly sewing. Savannah accepted before going upstairs to her neighbor's apartment. Before heading up, Savannah ordered pizza, expecting to have some when she got home later on that day. An hour later, with the plan to drive her younger brother to work, Savannah's mother did not return on time. Her brother decided to go upstairs by himself around 2:30 in the afternoon. He heard the hum of a sewing machine, but received no response at the door. A few minutes later, Savannah's father, Joe, also went upstairs and knocked. Brooke responded that they were still working on the dress and Savannah was trying it on, hence why no one could open the door. Meanwhile, Norberta drove her son to work herself. Upon returning home, she found an untouched pizza. Concerned, she texted her daughter several times. Getting no reply, she went upstairs. A neighbor mentioned that Savannah had left soon after completing their fitting. Worried, Norberta went back to her apartment and observed all of Savannah's personal items. Shoes, purse, car keys were still there. Given Savannah's condition and discomfort caused by heat and swelling, it was unlikely she had gone for a walk. Norberta called Ashton to check if he had picked up their daughter. To her dismay, Ashton said Savannah wasn't responding to him either. Increasingly anxious, Norberta contacted the police and drove around looking for her pregnant daughter, who might have taken ill suddenly. While driving around, Norberta theorized that if Savannah had gone somewhere nearby, she would have seen signs of her. However, an uneasy feeling suggested otherwise. Later that day, police searched Brooke and William's apartment since it was Savannah's last known location. The landlord allowed entry and cooperated fully. However, without a warrant, police did not search more thoroughly into closets or behind closed doors. The police informed the family that since Savannah was an adult capable of making her own decisions without informing them, and because there was no apparent crime evidence at or near home, the initial investigation concluded that she had left voluntarily. Savannah's family perceived this approach as indifferent and found it deeply upsetting. Police returned 2 more times for subsequent searches, but were unsuccessful in finding any additional information or clues regarding Savannah's whereabouts. William Hahn later testified during one of these searches as part of the ongoing investigation process. On August 23, 2017, William's colleagues informed law enforcement that he had boasted about having an infant at home. That same day, residents of the apartment complex reported hearing a baby crying from apartment number 5 and immediately alerted the police. This information enabled officers to secure a warrant and return to the familiar apartment for a comprehensive search. During this search, a newborn baby girl was found alive. Brooke divulged that Savannah herself had given her the baby 2 days after her disappearance. According to Brooke, Savannah did not want to keep the baby and had come over originally to assist with sewing a dress. On that day, she inquired how she could induce labor herself. She then left only to reappear 2 days later at 3 a.m. with the baby in her arms and handed her to Brooke. The couple was subsequently arrested, and Savannah was officially reported missing. The infant was taken to a local hospital and placed in temporary custody of Cass County Social Services. A few days later, DNA testing confirmed parentage, and she was reunited with her father. For 3 additional days, police and numerous local residents scoured the valley in search of Savannah. Chief Todd urged property owners and landlords to inspect their properties, buildings, garages, outbuildings, and vacant apartments for any signs of intrusion or other indications that someone might have been there. On August 27th, 8 days after Savannah's disappearance, a fisherman discovered a body wrapped in plastic along the Red River near Harwood. The body was identified as Savannah through a distinctive tattoo on her leg that read, "Too beautiful for Earth." On August 28th, Brooke Cruz and William Hone were formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and providing false information to police authorities. The couple began to talk. Brooke stated she initiated the altercation by accusing pregnant Savannah of stealing mail and mistreating her cat. The verbal argument escalated into a physical confrontation. Brooke pushed Savannah, causing her to fall and hit her head on bathroom sink, leading to loss of consciousness. Brooke then used a knife to perform an incision from hip to hip and removed the baby. Savannah drifted in and out of consciousness during this procedure. Under questioning, Brooke confirmed that William Hahn was unaware of the impending plan. According to her, when William arrived home, he entered the bathroom, saw Savannah, and inquired if she was alive. Brooke responded that she did not know and sought assistance. William briefly left the bathroom and returned holding a rope with which he strangled Savannah. Next, Brooke said they cleaned the floor and walls, then placed Savannah's body into a bathroom closet. When law enforcement arrived at their door, Brooke attempted to remain composed. The officers conducted a superficial search of the apartment without a warrant. Therefore, they couldn't inspect closets or dressers thoroughly. During these searches, according to the perpetrator, the infant was concealed under a blanket on their bed next to William. The child remained very calm and did not cry, thus avoiding detection at that time. By August 20th's third inspection, Savannah's body had already been moved into a dresser while the infant was hidden in a suitcase. In the early hours of August 21st, they transported the dresser downstairs and loaded it into their Jeep Cherokee to dispose of it by the river. William Hahn denied participating in the crime itself, but admitted only to hiding the newborn baby girl and providing false information to law enforcement in an attempt to cover up related activities. Both Brooke and William were assigned bail set at $2 million each, an amount William described as unrealistic and unreasonable for any ordinary individual. Brooke Cruz a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. William's involvement in the crime wasn't proven during the trial. Additionally, it came to light that Brooke's cellmate, Jennifer Robinson, testified against her. According to Jennifer, Brooke disclosed that she strangled Savannah with a rope because she discovered Savannah's affair with William and suspected that Savannah's child might have been his. On September 28, 2018, a jury acquitted William of conspiracy to commit murder. However, on October 30, 2018, after pleading guilty to kidnapping, he received a life sentence in prison. The following spring, in May 2019, William appealed to the Supreme Court. By October 7, 2019, at the sentencing review trial, Judge Olin, who initially sentenced William, indicated that despite the Supreme Court's dissent, he would still impose the harshest possible sentence at that time, 20 years in prison. Considering William had already spent 775 days behind bars by then, he must serve over 7 more years of his 20-year sentence. Baby Hazel remained unharmed despite such an unnatural delivery and is now 6 years old and attending kindergarten. Savannah's parents and the girl's father share joint custody. The grandparents manage a public Facebook page where they post updates about their granddaughter's well-being and activities. The case has gained significant attention, with Norberta being adamant that her daughter's disappearance wasn't taken seriously because Savannah was Native American. She commented on how different it would have been if a white woman had disappeared. "I've lived in Fargo almost my whole life and seen how differently Native Americans are treated." Following Savannah's death, Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp introduced Savannah's Law, which was signed into law in October 2020. This law aims to combat violence against Native American women by enhancing collaboration between federal, state, and tribal authorities. Norberta remarked on the law's passage, "It's sad that my daughter had to die for people to take Native Americans seriously." In Westfield, New Jersey, behind the stately doors of a luxurious mansion, a shocking secret lay dormant. John List, a devout father and husband, led what appeared to be the ideal suburban life with his wife Helen, their 3 children, and his elderly mother. Yet, beneath this perfect image, a brewing turmoil was about to spiral into a dark abyss from which there was no return. In November 1971, the unimaginable happened. The entire List family was brutally murdered, and the perpetrator vanished into thin air, leaving behind a mystery that would baffle authorities for nearly 2 decades. What was the real motive behind this horrifying act? And how did an ordinary man mastermind one of the most infamous disappearances in American history? To understand the tragedy of Breeze Knoll, we must journey back to the origins of its central figure, John List. Born in 1925 in Bay City, Michigan, to German-American parents, John's upbringing was steeped in a strict Lutheran faith, a doctrine that would dictate much of his life's path. John grew in the shadow of a domineering father and the weight of religious expectation. His home life was devoid of warmth and affection, replaced instead with rigid discipline and the demand for perfection. Seeking escape and perhaps a sense of purpose, List served as a laboratory technician in the Army during World War II. In 1944, his father died. After List was discharged in 1946, his return to civilian life saw him armed with a degree in accounting, a profession that prized the order and control he had long been conditioned to uphold. In 1950, he re-enlisted to fight in the Korean War. At Fort Eustis in Virginia, he met 24-year-old Helen Morris Taylor, a widow with a daughter, Brenda. Her husband was killed in action in Korea. Helen became the first woman of 26-year-old List. In 1951, John married her. The union, blessed under the eyes of God, was expected to be the foundation of John's ideal family. But beneath the surface, cracks began to form, revealing the dark side of the American dream. Helen's battle with alcoholism and a diagnosis of tertiary syphilis, a secret she kept from John until after their marriage, planted seeds of betrayal and resentment. This disease made her nearly blind. Helen's disability prevented her from walking, and she mostly stayed in bed. The couple had 3 children together, Patricia, John Jr., and Frederick. In 1960, List's stepdaughter Brenda got married and left their house. John was vice president and controller in a bank, and also Sunday school teacher at the local church. The family never missed a service. To the outside world, they were a picture-perfect family. Yet, John's inability to reconcile the imperfections of his family life with the unattainable standards set by his faith and upbringing foreshadowed a silent storm brewing on the horizon. 1965 marked a turning point for the Lists as they moved into Breeze Knoll, a 19-room Victorian mansion with marble fireplaces and a Tiffany skylight in Westfield, New Jersey. It was a grand statement, but its upkeep put a strain on John's finances, further exacerbating the pressure he felt to provide and maintain the facade of success. It was the most expensive house in Westfield at the time, and the family could not fully furnish it. List's neighbors said he was cold and reserved. Sometimes they saw John mowing his lawn in a full suit and tie. His marriage was probably unhappy. The family's Lutheran pastor overheard Helen saying to John, "If you were half the man my first husband was, we wouldn't be having the troubles we're having." John's professional life was marked by frequent changes and failures, a stark contrast to the image of stability he desperately sought to project. In 1971, at the age of 46, John List lost his position at the bank. The job loss was a personal humiliation, a failure not only as a provider but as a man worthy of respect and admiration. His efforts to find another employment were unsuccessful. The thought of informing his family about the loss of income seemed unbearable. He dressed for work every morning and spent his days at the train station, reading newspapers, and covertly withdrew funds from his mother's bank accounts to cover the mortgage. List declined to seek welfare assistance, fearing the humiliating shame it would bring upon him in the community and contravening the values of self-reliance instilled in him by his father. The psychological portrait of John List that emerges is one of a man at war with himself, torn between the dogmatic beliefs of his upbringing and the realities of his faltering life. John was walking a tightrope of his own making. The chasm between the ideal and the real was widening, pushing him to the brink. As winter's chill enveloped the town of Westfield, a shroud of mystery began to unfurl around the stately List mansion. What lay within its walls was a secret so dark it would chill the bones of a community. Days turned to weeks since anyone had seen John List or his family. Neighbors grew concerned, lights in the mansion burned day and night, yet its inhabitants seemed to have vanished into thin air. The once meticulous lawn now lay unkempt, a silent testament to the abnormality of the situation. Finally, light bulbs started burning out one by one. December 7, 1971, marked the day the silence was broken. Police, responding to concerned calls, entered Breeze Knoll. Nothing could have prepared them for the scene that awaited. Organ church music was playing in the cold house as the heating had been turned off. In the mansion's ballroom, the lifeless bodies of the List family were found, each meticulously laid out. John's wife, Helen, their 3 children, Patricia, John Jr., Frederick, and his mother, Alma, had all been shot. It was a methodical execution, a chillingly orchestrated end to a family. On November 9, 1971, List dropped the children off at school. He returned home around 9 a.m. and got 2 old handguns from his garage. While his children were at school, he entered the kitchen where his 47-year-old wife, Helen, was having toast and sipping her morning coffee. He shot her in the back of her head. Then he went upstairs to his 84-year-old mother's room on the 3rd floor. She was making toast. Greeting him with a kiss, she asked him about the loud noise. List said he didn't know and shot her in the face. "Like Judas, I gave her a kiss," he remarked later. Then he dragged his wife's body to the ballroom, mopped the floor in the kitchen, and ate a sandwich waiting for his children. In his memoir, List wrote that he had to mop the floor 3 or 4 times, and because they had no mop wringer, he had to wring it by hand. He confessed that he experienced no qualms or feelings of remorse. His 16-year-old daughter, Patricia, and 13-year-old son, Frederick, arrived home from school. List shot each of them in the back of the head. "I approached all of them from behind so they wouldn't realize at the last moment what I was going to do to them," he said later. "After it was all over, I said some prayers for them all, from the hymn book. That was the least that I could do." He said he had to kill his mother because the other deaths would have been a tremendous shock to her. After that, List had lunch and drove to the post office, and then to his bank to close both his and his mother's bank accounts. Later, he drove to Westfield High School to watch his 15-year-old son, John, play in a soccer game. He drove him home where he shot him 10 times. Evidence of a misfire indicated that his son tried to defend himself. He also didn't die at once, hence List shot multiple times. "I didn't want him to suffer," he said later. He sent notes to the children's schools and part-time jobs saying that the children would be visiting their ill grandmother in North Carolina for a few weeks. Milk, mail, and newspaper deliveries were stopped by him. List arranged the bodies of his wife and children on sleeping bags in the mansion's ballroom. Their faces were covered with rags. His mother's body was left in her converted apartment in the attic. List slept in the house where his family lay dead, then left the next morning. Before leaving, he tuned a radio to a religious station, leaving religious hymns playing in the empty rooms of the house. He explained that the music over the intercom was supposed to deter burglars. When the police discovered the bodies, John List was nowhere to be found. The man who sought control above all had orchestrated his family's demise before vanishing, leaving behind only a haunting letter that attempted to justify the unjustifiable. It was a 5-page letter to his pastor. List's letter speaks volumes. It reveals a man who saw himself as a failure, unable to fulfill the roles society and his faith demanded of him. In his mind, murdering his family was a twisted salvation from financial ruin and the moral decay he perceived. In his letter, he said, "As I was doing it, I knew it was wrong. But as he was broke, he didn't want to subject his children to poverty and the shame of losing their mansion. He also said he saw too much evil in the world, and he had killed his family to save their souls. He was afraid that his family, confronted with a world full of evil and poverty, would turn from God. To his mind, this was the only way to ensure their safe arrival in heaven. He said, "I've finally decided that the only way to save them from that was to kill them." He wrote that his family was turning away from God and would ultimately spend eternity in hell for their sins because his wife Helen had stopped going to church. Moreover, his teenage daughter Patty desired to become an actress. I'm sure many will say, "How can anyone do such a horrible thing?" My only answer is it isn't easy and was only done after much thought. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "Mother is in the hallway in the attic, 3rd floor. She was too heavy to move." List's letter offered a window into a fractured mind. His actions suggested a delusional belief system. His need for control and perfection, coupled with deep religious convictions, warped into a justification for his unfathomable choice. The discovery of the List murders sent shockwaves through Westfield. One of the first officers who saw the bodies, Robert Kenny, said, "After 28 years as a police officer and 14 as an investigator, you see everything. But this was unique." The mystery of John List's disappearance would confound authorities for nearly 2 decades. But as the manhunt stretched on, the legend of John List grew, a ghostly figure who had slipped through the cracks of a society he could no longer face. With the grim discovery inside Breeze Knoll, the quiet town of Westfield found itself at the epicenter of a horrifying mystery. The investigation into the List family murders unfolded like a puzzle missing crucial pieces. Each room of the mansion told a part of the story, but the narrator of this tragic tale was conspicuously absent. As the manhunt for John List began, investigators faced the daunting task of tracking a man who seemed to have evaporated. Meanwhile, the public grappled with the duality of a devout churchgoer and a cold-blooded killer. List had planned his escape meticulously, cleaning the crime scenes, cutting himself out of every family photo with scissors, severing ties, and leaving no trace. He burned the photos along with his passport in his Weber grill. In an era before digital footprints, List vanished into the ether. The FBI found his car parked at Kennedy International Airport in New York, but there was no trace of him. The police investigated hundreds of leads without success. In August 1972, 9 months after the murder, Breeze Knoll stood empty until it was mysteriously destroyed by fire. There were rumors that the house was cursed. Despite being officially deemed arson, no suspects have been identified. The fire also consumed the mansion's ballroom-stained glass skylight, believed to be a signed Tiffany original and valued at around $100,000 at that time, which would be approximately $700,000 today. Selling the ceiling would have allowed List to pay off his debts. By 1974, a new house had been constructed on the property. The absence of technology in 1970s was a cloak of invisibility for List. His identity was erased. For List, it was a desperate bid for survival. A twisted form of self-preservation that made him abandon his name, his history, and his crimes. Assuming the name Robert Peter Clark, List started anew in Denver, Colorado. Here, he melded into the fabric of society, unnoticed. For List, integrating into a new life was simpler in a city like Denver, which during the 1970s saw a significant number of people relocating from the East Coast. He grew a mustache, swapped his suits for casual clothes, and took to wearing a cap, yet made no significant effort to alter his appearance further. He first worked as a chef at a Holiday Inn, and between 1979 and 1986, he worked as the controller for a paper box manufacturing company located just outside Denver. Adopting a new identity allowed List to compartmentalize his guilt and live outwardly as a regular citizen. Yet, beneath the surface, the burden of his past life lingered, a specter only he could see. List's new life was a mirror of the old, minus the family he had destroyed. He worked in accounting, remarried, and maintained a facade of devout faith. He became a member of a Lutheran church and organized a carpool for congregants without transport. At a church event, he encountered 35-year-old divorcee Dolores Miller, an Army PX clerk, and they married in 1985. He told her his first wife had died of cancer and moved into her apartment in Aurora, Colorado, situated 10 miles east of Denver. In February 1988, the couple moved to a house in the Brander Mill neighborhood of Midlothian, Virginia. There, List continued his career in accounting at a small firm. For nearly 2 decades, John List, now Bob Clark, believed he had outsmarted the world and committed the perfect crime. He let his guard down, losing his mustache. But as the 18th anniversary of the murders approached, a television show was about to shatter his illusion of freedom. On May 21, 1989, a pivotal episode of America's Most Wanted aired, turning the tide in one of the most baffling manhunts in American history. The decision to feature List on the show was a gamble. With few leads and fading memories, the case had grown cold. But America's Most Wanted had a secret weapon, an age-progressed clay sculpture of List, crafted by forensic artist Frank Bender. Psychologists speculated that List might wear spectacles similar to those he wore in his youth, as a reminder of more successful days. Bender's creation was eerily prescient. He envisioned List with glasses and a receding hairline, a testament to the power of forensic artistry. An audience of 22 million saw the sculpture. When the episode aired, the phone lines lit up. On that evening, a man known as Robert Clark was present at a church event in Midlothian, Virginia. Meanwhile, several of his acquaintances were at their homes, contacting the hotline established by America's Most Wanted. They identified their reserved friend and neighbor as the individual who had horrifically murdered his family years earlier. At the same time, people from Golden, Colorado, were reaching out to the same hotline, asserting that John List and Robert Clark, the local French fry cook who had recently moved to Virginia, were indeed the same person. An old friend of Dolores recognized the man on TV and also made a call. One tip came from List's next-door neighbor. According to her, the resemblance was striking. She said her neighbor was also an accountant and attended church. The viewer's tips led authorities to Virginia. The confrontation was the culmination of years of evasion, a moment when List's meticulously constructed world came crashing down. FBI agents knocked on the door of the shared home of Dolores and Robert Clark. Dolores answered, but her husband was at work. She showed them 2 photos, one from their wedding day, which were the spitting image of the bust. One officer stayed with her while the other rushed to List's accounting firm where he was apprehended. The arrest of List, who had been a pillar of respectability to the outside world, was a shock. FBI agent Kevin August said, "He was a strange man, I would say. He was not very animated. That's the best way to put it. He seemed to me as a vessel, with no soul in there." When driving List to the police station, August asked, "What kind of man are you, that you killed your mother, your wife, and your children, and then assumed another identity and married another woman who has no idea who you are?" List said nothing, but a single tear rolled down his eye. List maintained his assumed identity for months after being extradited back to Union County, New Jersey in 1989. However, on February 16, 1990, when confronted with undeniable proof, including fingerprints matching those in his military records and crime scene evidence, he admitted to his real identity. In custody, List confessed to the murders, citing financial ruin and a twisted belief that killing his family was a merciful act, sparing them the shame of poverty. But there were deeper issues at play. List's need for control, his rigid moralism, and his inability to face failure. His actions, though unfathomable, were a twisted solution to an unsolvable problem in his mind. Expert psychologists also believed that List was going through a midlife crisis. The prosecution pointed out that was no excuse for killing 5 innocent people. A court-appointed psychiatrist determined that List suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, believing his only options were either to accept welfare, which he deemed unacceptable due to the potential for public ridicule, and the contradiction of his father's principles regarding the care and protection of family members, or to kill his family, ensuring their ascent to heaven. Alan Goldstein, who examined List for the defense, said, "It wasn't as if he didn't have a conscience. If anything, his conscience was too bright. He felt responsible for saving souls." His wife couldn't believe that List was a mass murderer. She said, "I love my husband very deeply. I cannot believe this is the same man." Later, List confessed to his wife, sobbing and saying to her, "I was always such a kind, gentle man, except for that one act." John List's capture closed a long-standing chapter of mystery and horror, but it also opened a window into the mind of a killer, revealing the dark corners where rationality warps into madness. The trial of John List unfolded in a Union County courthouse. Defense lawyers depicted List as someone deeply affected by a religious upbringing enforced by his parents, which, they argued, drove him to madness. However, the jury was unconvinced. Throughout the trial, the emotionless tone of List's letters, his clearly planned escape strategies, and his lack of remorse, maintaining he acted as the savior rather than the murderer of his family, resulted in his conviction. During his trial, List testified that his financial difficulties reached crisis level in 1971, following his job loss due to the shutdown of the Jersey City Bank. To hide this embarrassing fact from his family, he maintained his usual routines. Over time, the family's financial situation became worse, leading List to encourage his children to find part-time work under the guise of teaching them responsibility, though it was actually a strategy to aid the family's finances. Furthermore, he struggled with his wife Helen's alcohol dependency and her undisclosed tertiary syphilis, which she had hidden for 18 years after contracting it from her first husband. Helen had manipulated List into marrying her by falsely claiming pregnancy, then insisted on a Maryland wedding to avoid states that required syphilis testing before marriage. At the time, a premarital syphilis test was mandated in most other states. Her condition deteriorated over the years. She didn't say anything about that to List, but a thorough examination revealed the condition in 1969. Eventually, her disease, together with her excessive drinking, transformed her into an unkempt and paranoid recluse who would often humiliate List in public, comparing him unfavorably to her first husband in bed. John List's actions were a cataclysmic culmination of years of internal and external pressures. Financial despair, a crumbling facade of familial perfection, and a rigid, punitive religious upbringing coalesced into a devastating breakdown of his moral and psychological boundaries. Witness after witness painted a portrait of a man at odds with reality. Yet, it was List's own letters and the chilling confession tape played for the jury that offered the most haunting insights into his psyche. In his confession, List spoke with a chilling calmness, claiming financial ruin and a misguided attempt to save his family's souls as his motives. But beneath this veneer of rationalization lurked deeper, darker struggles. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. On April 12, 1990, List was found guilty on 5 counts of first-degree murder. During his sentencing hearing, he refused to fully accept blame, stating, "I feel that because of my mental state at the time, I was unaccountable for what happened. I ask all affected by this for their forgiveness, understanding, and prayer." However, the judge firmly disagreed, declaring, "John List is without remorse and without honor," he said. After 18 years, 5 months, and 22 days, it is now time for the voices of Helen, Alma, Patricia, Frederick, and John List to rise from the grave. List received the maximum sentence allowed then, 5 consecutive life terms. List appealed his conviction, citing post-traumatic stress disorder from his military experience as impairing his judgment and claiming the letter found at the crime scene, which was essentially a confession, should be considered a confidential message to his pastor and not admissible in court. These appeals were dismissed by a federal appeals court. Years later, List admitted some regret for his actions in a 2002 interview with Connie Chung, saying, "I wish I had never done what I did. I've regretted my action and prayed for forgiveness ever since." Regarding why he didn't take his own life, he believed it would have prevented him from going to heaven, where he hoped to be reunited with his family. "So eventually I got to the point where I felt that I could kill them. Hopefully, they would go to heaven. and then maybe I would have a chance to later confess my sins to God and get forgiveness. He also said, when we get to heaven, they'll either have forgiven me or won't realize what had happened. I'm sure that if we recognize each other, we'll like each other's company just like we did here when times were better. List passed away at the age of 82 from pneumonia complications on March 21, 2008, in prison at St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton, New Jersey. John List's case became a cornerstone in the study of family annihilators, offering insights into the mind of a killer who operates under the guise of protector, driven by twisted logic and profound psychological distress.